during my program, to my cohort, my beloved cohort, and I made weekly appointments. And one is in Belgium. The other one is in New York State. So we would have to do it like a Saturday or Sunday, sometimes a weekday even. Morning for me, which would be noon for Juan Carlos, and then like 6 in the evening or 7 in the evening for Bara. And we really needed that time to be able to process what we were learning very quickly during that week. And because, in our program, there's so much of the spirituality and the emotion involved, the psychological stuff involved when you're going through the program, it was an added level of processing, and then to be able to process all of what we were taking in an intellectual level, I don't know that I could have gotten through so quickly and so easily without completely losing my mind had it not been for those weekly appointments. And, that was our own personal little salon, what I called our pod.
Yes. I mean, I've had that recently with a colleague who's in the humanistic division, right? But we started talking about synchronicities. And so I said, well, I've actually never read Jung's book on synchronicity. He said, well, let's have a book club. And we tried to get other people to join. But of course, it's difficult for multiple people to decide on a time that works for everyone. So it just ended up being the two of us. But it was very reinvigorating for me because I haven't been focusing as much on transpersonal topics. My research is slightly different. I've been focusing in philosophy a bit more. And so to be able to read synchronicity and talk to someone about it who actually didn't know so much about transpersonal ideas was really fun. It was really fun to be able to do that. And so I'm all in favor of these kinds of meetings and connections whenever they can happen with whoever can join.
I'm with you. I agree. I mean, I would have probably suggested doing something like what our program did, which was to have an online discussion forum. But to be honest, of the classes I took at Sophia, yours was one of my favorites by far.
Yay!
First of all, you're so knowledgeable about the topic, but really the discussion, the real-time discussion, was what I truly appreciated. Yes, we don't have that in a GMATP, and they're not even looking at it because it is a global program. But I told Nancy, I'm like, it worked so well for this phenomenology class. One person was in Boulder, the other person was in New York, and yes, most of the students had to watch and then get in on the discussion thread. But between the four of us, the discussion between the four of us, I thought was just it's dynamic, and I think I just learned so much more.
Online education is a severe compromise for in-person education, and we would rather have the options so that people across the world can get the education that they want, because having the connection to the resources of the readings and having a professor to help you develop your writing is essential, but it's missing that in-person dialogical component, right? The dialogue is so much more important. I get really tired reading and having to write back to people.
Yeah.
Whereas we can just sit and, like last week with us, for 4 hours, just talk.
Right. I agree.
And it's different, but it's
too. Yeah. And it's the spontaneity that comes up during discussion. You might weave to different topics and then come back to address. And maybe that's just the way I talk. That's just the way I converse. I will eventually get back on track. But, to have the option of like branching out to these, to these little subtopics and exploring that for a hot minute or two and then coming back is it's so much juicier and yummier than like.
It's a living being. It is a living being that is transforming in the moment. And written text is also living being, but it's different.
I agree.
It's different, right? Because of course the author writes, types, sends a response in, and someone reads it, interprets it, and writes back, and it's another kind of a dialogue, but it's different.
Yeah. And there is that too, the interpretation, because God forbid that you're reading it in a space where you're putting an inflection on the words that were not meant to be there, And if you're not, you're not the best writer, I mean.
There is so much information in the tone of our voice, our facial expressions, and in our body movements.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we lose all of that with the written word. And I don't know if people really realize to the great extent that we're picking up information from people's voices and body movements.
I think I mentioned that to you last week when did I mention that to you when we were talking about intuition? Yeah, because you were telling me about your partner who does the same, who is able to process these micro expressions and whatnot very, very quickly, and is highly intuitive in that way. But it's sort of another form of intuition, and I think that's it. That maybe that's what that sixth sense is: the ability to process all the incoming information and the micro expressions and from another person so quickly that you're making sort of a jump in your thought process without being aware of it.
Yes, absolutely.
And not like true intuition in the psychic sense, which maybe is seventh sense. I don't know.
Right.
Hi, Bara.
Hi, Bara. I was just talking about you. She's part of my pod. So, yeah, what do you think about this, David?
Which part?
Any of it. Any of it.
Yeah, so my mind has been like processing all of it. That's why I'm also trying to make sure all the technology and everything's working properly. So I also did start locally. I don't know. I sent you guys a message that started just locally recording this in case we want to upload it later or fix it. That's an option as well. So which part? Let's see, the salon or the coping mechanisms or the
talking in person or sleeping in separate beds.
Yeah, so I like talking in person a lot more. I mean, I think I have to say that with the global education, so for those who are joining us on the call, Courtney taught she's on my screen, she's the bottom right corner, but on your screen, she's the top right. Courtney taught one of the Intro to Phenomenological Method class. Yes. And IPA it's an amazing research method that is rarely taught. And so if you want to learn it, usually you have to find books and do it yourself. So having someone guide you through this process and educate you was very helpful, especially someone who understands the qualitative and doctoral stuff. But I found the person-to-person connection was what made it easier. I mean, I could watch videos on it, but being able to interact and knowing somebody, I think, makes the bigger difference. So, yeah, I think connection is rather the key.
And understanding, I think. Understanding is easier when we're talking in person, because if I don't understand something you've said, I can immediately ask you to clarify.
As you're saying, the faces and being able to see people's expressions. And that's part of EQ. Now, that's also why I like coffee and, going out with people, getting out of the house and seeing things. Because I could just do Skype all day and never leave my room.
Yes, I do know. Work from home. And
kind of been my life. So I want to change that.
It's hard for people, especially I've heard a lot of people say that once you reach a certain age, or maybe you have kids and you're really busy, it's hard to connect with other people of your generalized age group. It's just hard to make friends at a certain point in life. Maybe 30s and 40s is what I've heard a lot of people talk about. And it can be really hard.
You don't feel bothered half the time. You're just like,
it
takes so much energy to create new friendships.
I'm going to pause on that one because I'm going to challenge that. And sorry to interrupt, but I don't agree.
Really?
And I find that is it's a myth that's perpetuated that causes the bigger problem. Like, you think about it.
To do with, maybe personally for me, I'm thinking along those lines because I tend to be more introverted. So for me, it does require a lot of energy, which I'd rather not spend.
But now, what the unfair comparison is the age group. So if you look at when you had tons of friends, it was probably in college, in high school, or right afterward when you were doing a lot of activities.
Okay.
I always meet people through school or work. That's actually how I make all of my friends and connections.
So if you want to make more friends in the world, like you're really, really lonely, the best thing you can do is to go to every meetup that interests you, to join clubs, to maybe, take a class and start introducing yourself to people, and you will begin making lots of friends again.
Mm-hmm.
But we get lives, we have kids, we get jobs in which we get hyper-focused, and then we isolate.
I just don't think people have enough time to go to a meetup, hardly. Like, you have to exercise. You have to run errands. You have to take care of your kids. You have to have time with your spouse. You have to clean your house.
Actually, marriage is the biggest killer of friendships.
Yeah. Well, and I think when I was referring to people I've read of their experience in this sense, it's specifically women talking about being single. And once all of your other friends are married, starting to have kids, you no longer fit in with those friends anymore.
Your third wheel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, no.
But there's always other single people, like at those meetups and
at the bars, and because all their other friends.
Your opportunities and.
I think you have to adjust your friendships with those people, because I know here in Ranch where I live, it's suburban San Diego, more or less, and I have made some friendships here, but they're very they're only with the women in the group, right? Rarely, actually never have I been invited to an outing where it would be a couples. Even though I had a partner for 4.5 years, never was I invited to a couples party because we weren't married. Those were specifically for married people. Okay. Now, I'd be invited to general parties where there's a whole lot of people, or out with, breakfast with the gals, or lunch club we had. But I thought that was interesting, that it wasn't, there was no way for my partner at the time to actually become a part of my community because he was not included in those social situations. So I don't know what that. Yeah. So it's, those are very specific friendships, and I call them my mom friends, because they're
your mom friends.
Because I met them through my son's school.
Yeah.
Doing activities for the school.
I guess if you're not married, you're seen as still somewhat of a free agent that might be somewhat of a threat. I don't
say about you the way you have, but how you trust your husband. That's a reflection on me.
No, what? Wait. Say that again, because there's something there. Society-wise.
Oh, there's a huge thing there. Yeah. So these same people that I have been referring to commenting on this scenario have talked about how if you are a single woman, or I suppose even if you are dating someone, but you're not married, you haven't made that commitment, that lawful commitment, that you are a threat, that you as a single woman may steal somebody's husband. Because
you're fun and exciting and new and novel and
I suppose.
What is that word?
I don't know.
This person who chose to commit the rest of their life, say, I want to be with you forever, and says, let's do this. And
I feel that people don't trust their commitments, I suppose. They don't trust their marriage partners, or...
To be honest, the people I've only, I know who cheated were married. There's, you know what I mean? Even in my relationship with my ex-partner, unfortunately, he was living here at my house, and he had an affair with a married woman. So it wasn't even like she was flat out married with 2 kids. It's you know what I mean? Hi, Dila.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that for a moment, because I think infidelity is, I mean, that's actually one of listed as a spiritual trauma in my research. Like, broken vows can be a spiritual trauma. Like, I was married for 30 years, it's my person, and suddenly they, broke vows, or
Hey, Jason.
5-7 years.
Jason?
I know someone who, a friend of mine had a cousin who was dating her partner for 9 years. They got married, and he immediately cheated on her after they got married.
That's interesting.
I have heard that a lot. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
There must be something about, and I'm not even going to attribute it to men, but there must be something in the psyche that's screaming against like a monogamous relationship that is set in stone by society somehow.
Well, if you get married, you have signed a contract that says you will be with this person through sickness and in health and forevermore.
Of course.
So okay, so let's this is where as the guy I become the villain.
No.
This is really about what I'm about to say is where I become the villain. Is all right. So why is it that, see, if a guy is out and he's with his buddies and then he meets this amazing girl, they're like, wow, does she have a sister? If a girl is out and
I would prefer a woman.
Oh, sorry. I think woman.
Yes.
Okay.
A guy and a woman.
Okay, not okay. Guy. So guy is an adult.
Guy and girl is not an even.
Oh,
a
interesting.
Guy is an older man, but a girl is like a young girl, right? Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I always think as men as childish or adolescent, so that's why I've always used the term guy instead of men. So men, to be a man, that means they've grown up, but most men haven't. Most men are just guys.
Not us. No.
All right. So when a woman is out there and she meets an interesting guy and she's like, "Ooh, I want him," not does he have a brother? It's so. Because women look at the individual and don't assume that the family is going to be alike. Men, it's like, oh, are looking at the superficial. Does she have a sister? I don't care about her personality, but apparently those genes, I like that. So here's where the villain part comes in. Why is it that women want what someone else has? So this man gets married to a friend of theirs. He's a really nice guy. They see all these great features about him. He's, caring, compassionate. Why is she going after the unavailable one? Even, because there's a chance and she's not supposed to. And if he chooses her, and I always thought it was about
there's something about the choice, because I can remember a roommate of mine back in college who said, "I like jerks," and I was like, "Why? I do not understand that." And she said, "Because when they finally choose me, I feel special."
Oh, okay.
So jerks to everybody else. They're mean to the waitress, or they're mean to other people.
Mean to her too.
But maybe he's the kind of person who's thinking that she can change a man, that there's a challenge there.
Well, there's a conquest. There's a challenge.
Yeah.
There's a challenge and a conquest there.
But to what David was saying, I have heard, and I don't know, and this is probably true in most cases, that you're going for the taking. As a woman, I would be going for the taken man because he's been vetted.
Yes.
If some other woman wants him, then obviously he's worthy.
If some other woman has him and he's displaying all these traits that you just described, compassion and kindness, then you think, oh, it's just him. I've never been able to meet a guy like that. I've never had that. It must just be him. He must be special. I now want him. Rather than saying, oh, look, that's an example of this kind of person existing. There must be others like him out there.
Yeah.
So go find.
It's funny in college, computer geek, I just had more hair. Still, the slender geek guy. And I'd be walking down the street with my girlfriend, and who was, I mean, she could have modeled. Like, she was an astrophysicist major and like brilliant, very special. But people, I got a lot more attention from women externally. I'm like noticing like women checking me out all the time, and it's like, is it just when I'm with her? You know, it's
Yeah,
like,
that makes sense. Because, yeah, I think you're right, Francis, that you've been vetted, essentially. You're with another woman. And so, therefore, you must be good enough, right? If another woman has...
And if a looker like that is with you, then you're better than good enough. You're worthy.
Hmm?
There's a book called Irrational Behavior, and like for dating wise, like if you want to be the most attractive person in the room, have a friend who's less attractive with you, because it's a comparison effect.
There's always a comparison.
And the same thing though, if if a guy is with a very beautiful woman, then he automatically becomes more attractive than all the other men in the room.
This is a ridiculously non-transpersonal though.
You know, it is very transpersonal, and that's the thing, is just transpersonal is people want to say it's touchy feely, feel good, it's the positive, but this is human nature.
Is it?
Well, so the transpersonal part of that is that if you have a friend and you really like their partner, you like his qualities, the transpersonal move is to know that he is not a singular exemplar. Right. There are others like him out there, and you need to set the intention that you will only accept dating someone who has those similar qualities.
Right. And then, the additional qualities that would fit for you.
Right.
Know that
you're not seeing the parts of that person that are not compatible with you.
Interesting. Say more on that.
Well, you're not living with that person. You're not interacting with that person on a daily basis. You're not having to negotiate errands or talk about what you want to do with your free time with that person. You don't see the arguments that inevitably occur between those two people. Therefore, you're seeing an idealistic vision. You're really probably just seeing what you want to see. Really.
Yeah. It's the fantasy.
Yeah. And I mean, that's always how it is at the beginning of any relationship, I think. Well, maybe it depends on the person, but at first everything is so rosy, honeymoon period. This person that you're dating is so wonderful, but then, that wears off.
I give it 4 months. You figure out the other person within 4 months. Like, I've heard, and this is true of my late husband, that like men do have an ability to like within minutes determine if they want to be with this person an extended amount of time. But I know personally, and I've seen this for other women, like if you've gone in enough dates in 4 months, then you're going to be like yay or nay.
Okay, so if you've been with someone for 4 months, you're gonna be like yay or nay because you've seen more or less of them, right? My ex of mine said people take 6 months, but people show their true colors. And I'm like, I'm just me all the time. Like, I'm not hiding anything. It's just...
No, I think you have to go through some kind of a difficult experience. It varies how difficult it needs to be, but you have to either get into the routine mundaneness of life together and then see how each other behaves. Yeah.
Because I mean, even if you are the person that you always are, David, which we know that you are, the other person, even if she's seeing you in that way all the time, she has to determine whether or not she can live with the fact that you put your socks on the dining room table, or you know what I mean, like.
Or ask me to change it, and then I'll just change it. Like the exception, but I guess some people don't change, but sometimes awareness is key.
Like I'm very open and authentic always, but when I first started dating my partner, we were rather enraptured with each other, and I was still finishing my coursework, my PhD coursework, which was much easier than when ITP shifted to Sophia, and then I began the dissertation research process. That became much more difficult, and I became much more difficult because of it.
Yeah.
right? So my partner saw two different sides of me, in a sense.
But,
just depend on the work that was going on in my life.
But the good thing, too, is that you were able to observe how your partner reacted to you in this situation.
Yes.
You know, Courtney is a PhD in crazy PhD mode, right?
He's been very patient.
Right. But had it been more about him and not allowing you the time that you needed, then it probably would have been a totally different outcome, right?
Well, and that's an anxiety-provoking thing for a sustained amount of time.
But life is anxious. And that's
what?
Life is anxious. And this is what we had started to talk about, like coping mechanisms, because life is anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's more than just anxious, though. Sometimes it's scary because actually, and this is a strange comparison maybe, but I'm qualifying this. Entering the dissertation process is like getting a terminal disease or getting a life-threatening disease. You don't know when it's going to be over. It may be an extended amount of time, and hopefully you'll beat it.
You don't know if it will kill you.
It might kill you. And then your partner is just there for it. They're like,
people always think that's such a dramatic way of talking about something, but I swear as much as I heard people talk about that in the PhD process, you can't really believe it until it happens to you.
Yeah, during this call, I just got an email that my committee member is now finally been approved for me to submit another form. It's been a month or 3 weeks of just trying to get this person approved and being in this limbo of, can I move forward yet? My meeting was supposed to happen this week, my proposal meeting, but I changed committee members and the whole thing. So it's like everything is, your whole life goes on hold.
Sure.
I've connected with a group of academics on Twitter that talk about mental health quite a bit. And what was the statistic that I just saw? 65% of PhD students claim some kind of a mental health disorder.
Mm-hmm.
At least 65%, maybe it was even 70 or 75%, right? Because you're just supposed to be a stoic. You're just always, everyone expects everyone, at least in this country, to be a stoic through thick and thin. You should just be able to cope with everything. Oh, look at you showing weakness, showing emotion. What, you can't handle life? Oh, well, get out of the game then.
We kicked people out of my graduate program in my master's for having mental health issues. Sorry, you can't be a counselor, you're bipolar.
Oh my goodness.
And those are the people that could most help others with similar mental health issues.
And according to state licensing, there's just exceptions. But like if I get a bipolar diagnosis, I actually have to notify DORA, which is the Department of Regulatory Agencies for Colorado, and then get an approved therapist, go through a process in which they evaluate me to make sure that my mental health won't deteriorate or hurt my clients.
Right. That all makes sense, right? Yeah.
It does, but it's also strong stigma to never, ever report.
Yes.
Right? Now, yes. I mean, granted, because the licensing is just there to protect the public. Mm-hmm. But now let's just go... This is one of the few professions where your mental health becomes public in that regard to others. Mm-hmm. But let's say you do have, like in grad school, if you get depressed or you're in dissertation, unless you have a very compassionate chair who's like supportive, most of them are like, suck it up, get through it. This is what it is. And if you don't break, then you deserve to be a doctor.
Right. Wow. This is the whole Twitter academic group talking about this is exactly what they have been talking about.
Yeah, I had a friend who went to Purdue and George Mason and GW. It's the same sort of thing. They literally try to break you.
Talk through that and like the fact that you're going to graduate with debt. I mean, and
you don't have to though graduate with debt.
Okay, that's true, but
many of us do. Yeah, many of us are.
You just have to be lucky and get to a state school where it's totally funded, and that's rare.
It depends on the discipline that you're in, the school that you're at. There's a lot of factors, whether or not you get funding, whether or not you get tuition.
That all causes anxiety, all of that. And we're not making it easier for people to get higher educations these days by like cutting funding, loan interest rates are so ridiculously high. It's crazy. What are we building a nation of?
Yeah, you're giving me anxiety thinking about this. I was kidding.
I mean, I think it's also what I've talked about with others is in a PhD in particular, but even with your master's thesis, you are working on the edge of human understanding. You are literally standing on the precipice, looking down into the darkness of an area for which there is no work done, because you're the one taking that first step into it. That is very isolating. That is very hard to stand there and to feel like you have a grip on things, right?
Yeah, that's true. I will say, in my personal experience, I mean, I know a lot of it was the self-doubt was crippling almost, because I kept thinking, somebody must have written about this somewhere before. I can't be the one. Why can't I find it? Why can't I find it? And to keep thinking that, like, this is, there was just so much self-doubt and so much thought that this is going to come back to me and bite me on the butt. Thank God we're in this program where, it's all honky-dory, love, love, love.
More supportive emotionally.
Yeah, I'd say there's more supportive, but there's a lot of rigor still that people complained about.
Oh. There better be rigor, for God's sake. Yeah, right. I would have dropped out if there hadn't been. I would have been like, I'm wasting my money on this. There's no way.
That was one reason I chose the schools that I did, because I did not want to be placed in a highly competitive environment where it was each for their own and little support from the professors and the mentors. And I thought it's already difficult enough to do the academic scholarship that one must do for that. If you're then also competing with your colleagues and your cohort, and it's just, what kind of an environment is that?
I don't think it's the kind of environment that actually creates a better product in the end, to be honest.
I think maybe some people thrive in a highly competitive environment because it pushes them to achieve more. I don't know. I think it probably is different, but I think that those people are rare.
So here's an interesting statistic. A lot of marriages, people who married for 7 years or 5 to 7 years, I believe, they meet their spouse in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look at grad school and how many single people you meet in grad school. They never got married.
I was the only one in my program that was single.
And there's a lot of doctorates, like especially female psychologists. If you're getting a PsyD, I'd say the chances are that you are married and a woman are 60 to 70%. If you're getting a PhD in psychology, it's different.
I was going to say majority of my cohort was single. Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I would say that there was... Literally, there was a PhD. There was one woman who was in her early 50s who was married.
Wow.
Yeah, because PsyDs are often done in bigger cities, like at private schools, and where they're 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and it's unpaid internships and things like that. So you're taking loans out, but those loans don't really cover living expenses. So usually you have to have a partner who's there to support you through it.
Yeah.
And with the promise of an income, people don't really like to do that unless, you're married, that the person's going to stick through. It's like, oh, I'm going to support them through med school, and then they just dump them afterward. We've heard that story, right? That was the plan. I was going to pay for med school, and then he was going to support me as I did this, but instead he just dumped me and found some younger girl.
A nurse.
women supporting men, and then,
I mean, I think my partner's made that joke before. Although it's not about financial support; it's about emotional support. He's like, "Well, I'm just here for you, and I'm going to help you finish your PhD, and it's fine if when you're done you want to dump me." We laugh about that because we laugh about these things. We talk very openly about our relationship, so because it is a lot for a partner to support someone going through that. I mean, there is very little reward for doing higher education these days, I feel.
Well,
except just the intrinsic, the intrinsic knowledge that you're learning and the hope that what you're learning is going to contribute to a better career in the future or contribute to some social problem or whatever it may be that you're working on.
And your partner has to buy into that too, right? See the value. Wow. Otherwise, why stick around through all your crazy? I can't even imagine myself doing it now as many times as I could, as often as I considered it. And my family is fully behind me on that. They actually said, just go ahead and finish it off and just get your PhD.
I told you to do that.
I probably told you too.
You told me, Nancy told me, I like half my cohort, just go ahead and get your PhD. And I'm like, why would I willingly do that to myself?
Because most of us were still in the coursework or saw the potential, like you'd be a great expert in the field.
No, I said your work is good enough. If you want to, you should. But I'm not sure that I said do it.
Yeah.
And it's not just a go ahead and finish it off kind of thing. That's
I was totally like, do it. Do it.
Yeah, it was. And even my entire family's like, yeah, just go ahead and do it. My sister's like, yeah, I'll go into school with you. And my son's in this, 5-year program where he's going to graduate with his doctorate. And so for like a hot minute or so there, we were all like, hey, let's 3 of us get our doctorates together. That'll be fun as a family.
That is actually not uncommon.
And we're like, that's insanity. I think it's still sort of on the table, but kind of pushed way to the other side of the table where, like, the yucky things are, but
I mean, there's some things you just never know when the right time is. You just got to jump in and do it. I mean, I know that I just was up for the challenge. I knew it was going to be challenging and I was like, bring it on.
Yeah, I thought I had all the coping mechanisms ahead of time. I got this, yoga, meditation, and then the first quarter. Yeah, like
okay, can we talk about this then? How sometimes yoga and meditation are not enough. They really are not, and spin
you backward.
Yeah. I have this problem with thinking that meditation and yoga are panaceas for all of life's problems because they're not.
Yeah, actually, I think yoga and meditation are recovery after life's problems. I don't think they're good during life's problems a lot of time. Meditation, maybe.
Meditation,
like
because
5
it's
minutes,
easier.
15.
Yeah, it's easier to just sit for 5 minutes. Yoga, the energy it takes to motivate yourself to either go to a class or do a practice on your own.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Ooh.
That has been my issue. It's like, you need to go. I've been with my therapist, like, you feel better when you go to yoga. It's like, yes, but then I don't think for the rest of the day. Like,
it forces you out or zones you out.
Yeah, well, so the thing about you guys were saying movies or Netflix is one of the ways people chill, kind of reset. When you're actually watching television, your brain goes into a beta state, in which it also you begin to relax. I think I'm losing Frances. Did you still see her, Courtney?
I see her. She's a bit frozen though.
Okay. But so when you're watching Netflix, your brain goes in a beta state and then you stop thinking. You're concentrating your focus, but it's a relaxed, it's just observing. So it's like watching something, people watching.
Right.
But when you're doing yoga, Frances, Courtney, my connection is poor.
Yeah, she's just having connectivity issues probably.
Okay, and we can give it a say. You might just give it a close other windows, Frances, and that might fix it. And just give Skype a chance to catch up. So what was I saying?
So your brain goes into the beta wave.
The beta state, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're yoga. So if that 30 minutes to get ready for yoga, got to get up, yes, might get you out of bed. You go to yoga, you feel great, and then you're in this blissed out state. And so now you have this huge cortisol drop. and you had this great tension release. It's kind of like, well, actually, it doesn't really fit.
I mean, it's really good exercise.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like right after you go for a really long run, and then you come home and it's like, okay, now I'm gonna work on this stuff. Maybe. Sometimes your body just wants to reset. You need a half an hour to an hour for like everything to come back in a homeostasis.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I need a lot of physical energy for my mental work.
Yeah.
I think people don't realize when you're really thinking, concentrating, and writing on research, for example, you are using a lot of energy. Your brain is actually eating up a lot of the glucose storage, right? Mm-hmm. I hate to say you're burning calories when you're thinking. Sounds so dumb.
But, no, it's true. The brain only uses glucose.
Right. And so if I do some kind of intense exercise earlier in the day, I am less likely to be able to sit down and have the energy to focus for 3 hours. Oh, there she goes.
Yeah, no, she's hosting this call. I'm wondering what will happen.
I'll try to add her again here.
Otherwise, I can attempt to add. Now that we know how the system has to work, that I can set this computer up. My main powerhouse computer is the streaming system, like the hub, and then can send out invitations. But then I also have to connect from another computer.
For some reason, she's not showing up on my contacts list.
It's probably
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi. I hear you, but I can't see you.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah, your video's off still.
Oh, my video's off.
Shows loading on my screen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, it'll come back. But keep the conversation going. I was curious.
About which part? Where were we?
Yoga and meditation.
Oh yeah, so coping mechanisms, how yoga, like the panacea, yoga and meditation, the panacea for all ills. And I think that depends on what stage of life you're at. So like if you've been in a marriage for 5 to 7 years that has been very problematic and you haven't been touched and there's been lack of connection and socialization, you go to yoga and it's a whole new world. Mm-hmm. You know, the instructor goes around and corrects your posture and gives you, loving guidance and like, here, do this, gentle instruction. And then says, wherever you are is okay. You don't need to be doing this pose and that way. And you're like, oh, okay. So finally, instead of criticism from you're getting this encouragement, constructive encouragement. And you're seeing some people who might be role models of where you want to go. I would love to be able that bendy and do that thing, but I never will. And then a year or two goes by and suddenly you're doing poses you never thought you could.
Right.
While you're refining yourself and changing your life. I think it's a really good, I don't know, I'd almost say for someone if you're stuck and your life sucks and you're changing everything, go to yoga. Get a yoga membership.
If you can get yourself to yoga, then go. I mean, I think that's why it depends on the person, right? Because
yeah, it's usually when your life falls apart so drastically that you can go 3 to 5 days a week.
Right. So if you have the funds to be able to do that, great.
Yeah, well, and that's where the membership thing comes in because, is it worth $150 or $200 a month, depending on your studio, to invest that much of your time?
I mean, to me, there was a point where I had one teacher at the nearby neighborhood yoga studio that I liked, and he had to stop teaching his class. And I was like, I can't go to the studio anymore because I don't like the other teachers enough. I mean, they were fine, but I just felt I wasn't getting enough out of it. So I stopped going. And then I was just taking long hikes in the park. And I thought, well, this is a good substitute. Here I am out in nature, and it's a very different kind of thing. I do love being out in nature. I love hiking, so it suits me. So for me, it was a fine substitute. It fit a different need or met a different need of mine at that point.
Maybe that is dependent on where you are at that time in your life and what's going on.
And what you need, right?
Yeah. When does yoga and meditation stop working? And even hikes for me for a while there stopped working, and I turned to creativity. So there are all these different outlets, I guess, whether external or internally based, that you can use to manage your stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's one thing I wanted to mention as a coping mechanism is a concept from William S. Burroughs, actually, and it's do easy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And it's like, do easy. Everything, just do it the easiest way you can. Because I find this really helpful for me because I do have a lot of energy and I can be very forceful about things. And so sometimes I find myself going around thinking about the things I need to do or doing things around the house and putting too much energy into it. Or even just thinking about, oh, should I go to this exercise class, hemming and hawing and wasting all this energy? It's too much deliberation. It's too much energy. Like, do easy. Just either decide to go and do it or stop.
I love that.
You know, it's the make a decision. Maybe sucks. Being in limbo of maybe I should do this or this coulda, woulda, shoulda, maybe, and maybe, instead of yes. Like right now, my room is an utter disaster. But this last week, like it has literally gotten so bad, and I've just kind of accepted, you know what, I'm not cleaning for a little bit. I'm just going to I have got way too much on my plate and all this other stuff, and I need some me time. And if I have to live in clutter for the moment, I'm going to accept that's what the way it is. I'm going to clean my room like maybe today or tomorrow, but I will add order to my life. But right now I'm feeling disordered. So why not let my external world be like my internal world?
Yeah, I really suffer from indecision, going back and forth, which, you know, that same quality makes me a good researcher because I can hold multiple viewpoints and weigh them out and hold both at the same time and not think one is better than the other. And yet in my personal life, I end up wasting a lot of energy thinking too much. What should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? And it's just like, make a decision.
Yeah, because the stats basically say that no matter what decision you make, it's not going to be a bad one. Like you will grow from it, usually. Like now, you see a movie or do you go for a run? The movie, you're lethargic. You're sitting there. You're taking in something. You're not creating. You go for a run. You do something. You know, or do I do this art project or do I go hang out with friends for an hour? It's like, oh, I waste all this time with friends. Did you really waste time?
No time is wasted ever, in my opinion.
Now, I think often it's a nice barometer to see like what you feel like what's more important to you right now, priorities.
Well, that's actually something that can trigger indecision because sometimes I do not know what is most important or what my priorities actually are. Sometimes I feel it's ironic because I feel very neutral. And that's kind of the problem. What should I do with myself? Well, I'm really neutral. I guess I could just sit here and be cool. But then it's like, no, you have to do something. Okay, well, you could do this and this and this, and let me weigh the options. And I'm like, oh, well, none of it matters. None of it actually matters.
You become too comfortable. Hey, Francis, click your video off.
Ta-da. Okay.
And let it catch up.
Oh, okay.
And then in a minute, turn it on again.
Okay, will do.
Because we miss seeing your face.
Well, you can see a photo of half of my face.
Yeah. So indecision. Yeah, that can create a lot of anxiety in general.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I with my coaching clients, I tell them just flip a coin. Heads you do this, tails you do this. And then I say, all right, flip the coin. And I say, what were you thinking when the coin was in the air? Did you want to be heads or tails? Like, please be heads, please be tails. We'll go with that. And if you still don't know, you go with heads or tails because you lose nothing.
Mm-hmm.
What if you have more than two choices, two options open to you?
Then get rid of one. Then the problem is, I think did we talk about this last week?
We did.
Yeah, there's an immense amount of power with two choices. Do you go A, B? If you go A, B, or C, people will often, red, blue, or green car. And if I can say one of those colors I definitely don't want, it makes it a lot easier to choose between the two.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have three options, the whole indecision, well, actually, let's use dating since we were talking about men and women and whatever. This partner is very intellectual and exciting. I had great conversations with this partner. He's physically active, incredibly attractive, no conversations, no intelligence, just pretty. And this partner is very ambitious, may not have a lot of time for me, but cares about me. Which one do you choose? And if you're very superficial, you're more interested in the superficial things in life, you'll choose the pretty boy or the pretty girl. And granted, I said not men or women on that one because obviously that person, in my opinion, hasn't grown up. You're still playing, you're hanging out at the gym and the beach, and you're going to get a job? What? No, I'm going to live with somebody. It's going to take care of me. That's their life plan until the looks go away.
Well, physical attraction is important, but it can't be the only thing because I think that is, it's ephemeral. It won't, the passion and the attraction won't actually last.
I agree.
But good conversation also isn't enough.
Yeah, and for sapiosexuals,
the longer you're with somebody, the deeper in love and with love that you grow with that person, they actually tend to become more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
I know, certainly by the time I married my husband, I thought he was just so hot. And that was after 7 years and, many, many pounds later. But, and when we had our son, he was such an incredible father that I just fell in love with him all over again and found him to be even more beautiful in different ways. So, I guess it depends on how you're, what you're calling attractive.
Well, that's the point. But it's like there's no one thing, and we're all different places.
Well, you have to do some self-inquiry so that you can know what it is that you find attractive.
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
Because I think I didn't realize I was. Well, you have to do. Sorry, there was some playback there.
I think Frances unmuted herself and muted herself, or the Facebook thing. Anyway, keep going.
What was I going to say? Oh, I don't think I realized I was a sapiosexual until actually pretty recently. When
I could have told you that when I first met you.
I think, first of all, there wasn't a term for it some years ago. So, once you name something, it becomes something that's more easily recognized. Right. Or maybe it did exist and I just wasn't.
No, you're right. It's actually it's part of a trend.
Yes.
Right, like the demisexual, sapiosexual, asexual. This is good. I like having more terms, just like we were describing partner, lover, girlfriend, boyfriend. It's can we create more terms, please? Because that helps us to define the diversity and the nuance of our relationships.
Except for people who find all that ambiguity. Which one am I supposed to be? Which group am I? Because if they're not doing inquiry, they're trying to fit in. That's the problem.
Well, the fitting in, I don't know about that, but you have to do self-inquiry. Now, how do you do self-inquiry to find out what it is you like and want? That's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question.
Frances, are you there?
I am here.
Okay.
I have no answer to that question. I was actually considering the whole sapiosexual thing last night, and I agree with both of you. I agree that it's nice to have more labels because it's nice to be able to think that, I'm not alone in one respect. There are other people like me who find intelligence highly attractive. And as I was sort of applying that label to myself yesterday, thinking about my lover, but then I was just I find that part of him ridiculously attractive and very fascinating, even though his brain works so much faster than mine, and maybe a little bit threatening, but not really, because I don't really care. But I have a type. So, you know, I mean, and they happen to be like tall, dark-haired men with deep blue eyes. Like, and if you were strictly sapiosexual, would you really find the intelligence being the sort of predominant factor in how you're attracted to someone, and would all the rest sort of be like less than secondary? I mean, could I be, I don't, you know, you know what I mean? Like, if he wasn't or close to my physical ideal, would I still find him as attractive as I do?
Okay, well, so you don't want sapiosexual to become an exclusionary term, right, where you're saying, I only like people who I get along with intellectually.
But I think that
because that's still too narrow, right?
Because if I say that I am heterosexual, I really am only attracted to a person of the opposite sex.
Well, I think everything is on the spectrum. So rather than our dualisms, you're either this or you're that. We have a spectrum of experience, of human experience, and you can fit anywhere on that. So you can tend to be more of a sapiosexual, but looks still matter to you. And maybe we don't have one term that encompasses all of that. I mean, like for me, it's not just the intellect, it's also the emotional intelligence.
Right.
Like, I can't just have a super smart partner. He has to be emotionally intelligent. He has to be quite sensitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, do we have a term for being attracted to someone who's emotionally sensitive? No, so I just go with sapiosexual because that to me always describes why I was different from my friends, where my friends would just see a hot person and be like, oh, that person's hot, I want to be with them. And I'd be like, well, they may be attractive, but I don't trust that. They might not be that interesting.
I agree.
And I always thought I don't think I thought I was strange because of that, but I was always different from my friends in that sense. So it was useful to come up or to find that term that, oh, okay, this is a thing.
Well, maybe this new terminology is really just a rebranding of, like, you know, what our laundry list used to be, you know, when you're like, ooh, I want a guy who's tall, who's handsome, who's smart, who's athletic. I mean, that's really all it is, right? He has to be smart. He has to be kind. He has to like my mother, you know. Like,
that's true. That's true.
You know, all of these things are hypothetical, because when it comes down to it, what if that person doesn't have any game? Because the novelty seems to be a big part of it. Oh, they didn't say these things, or they didn't do these things, or it's like, yeah, they're just boring and show up. It's like that, whatever the novelty aspect that keeps you interested. If they're not able to keep bringing that, then no matter how sensitive or attractive and all those things they make the list.
That's a very good point, because that's part of it for me. Is I'm always seeking novelty, and so, you know, with my current partner, it's like we can talk about so many things. I'm amazed by how we come up with things to talk about all the time. And it's like always keeping it fresh. Although we do tend to get bored with our daily lives because they seem so mundane. You know, it becomes so just like every day you got to decide what you're going to eat. You have to go to the grocery store. You got to like do this and that. And it becomes really like, I wish there was something big and novel that was going to just come, you know, come right through. And
that's part of the
Hi, Carol.
Right. Dawn.
Dawn, there we go. Hi, Dawn.
Right? You take vacation so you can put yourself in a situation that's not ordinary. Put yourself in a place that's not ordinary.
If you can afford a vacation, that is a great way to seek out novelty. Yeah, right.
But my impromptu 2-day staycation to get away from the fires was really all I needed to have, like, really refresh and reset my brain. And you know, find new interests in my lover, to be honest. Oh, there's that flying around outside my window. I need to bring him food somehow.
Well, some people would say that the anxiety and the potential danger of that situation actually would have heightened your emotions, heightened your experience of novelty, and that's why it was actually a more effective staycation in that sense.
That's possibly, that can be true.
Yeah, like Speed with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. Relationships built on high intensity experiences never work.
Right. I actually had an advertising psychologist at Stanford talk to me about this, where a friend of his had proposed to his fiancée while they were in a helicopter circling around an active volcano, and how he thought that was not actually a good thing to do, because of course she was going to say yes, because they were in this heightened, intense situation where your feelings are much more vibrant and at the surface. And
well, but from the guy's perspective, that's exactly what you want. You want to put her off guard so she can't say no. This is the person you want to spend the rest of your life with.
No, that is not a good plan.
If you've been dating her long enough.
No, that is not a good plan.
And then if she says no in that, you know for sure, heightened emotional experience and still doesn't want to be with you, just let it go. Forgive it up. We're having an agreement. We'll propose twice. Once in a high intensity situation. If you say yes, then we'll go to someplace really boring.
Well, see, if that was me, I would like check later and be like, wait, are you sure you still want to do this? Because like we were in this novel scenario, and so I just want to make sure that you still feel.
Let's go to the quiet section of the library and you have something to ask you.
Let's sit down, pay some bills together, then we'll talk about it again, okay?
Much more realistic.
Wow, that one's
do this together.
Let's go pay some bills together.
Yeah, pay your mortgage or whatever, and then talk about it afterwards.
Oh my goodness.
Let's pose the DMV. The most monotonous, boring, frustrating situation.
No. If you have Comcast, call and sit on Comcast customer service for an hour, then do it. I fortunately don't have Comcast anymore, so.
I think that's going the other way. The level of frustration that you would have would just like prompt you to be like, no, not right now. No, never.
Now? You think now is it okay? Actually, that's an interesting thing, because people are like, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
I think constantly checking in with each other is a really good thing.
I agree. And also checking in with like your agreement. Things do change, like especially when you have these different life events coming up. Like, if once you start your dissertation process, for example, or a new job, or, once you get into sort of the swing of that, then say, hey, are we still on the same page? I think people fail to do that often enough. And that's why things come out of left field where, they're not, I don't know, cheating or whatever.
Well, but that's also where commitment phobia comes in. It's like, oh, this is hard right now. It's like, yeah, if you're not in the relationship for it being hard, but people who want it to be novel and fun all the time. So you're going to leave in the middle of this tough situation. Okay. Like your partner's ends up in the hospital, and it's so hard for you that they're in the hospital. What about them? And then you're like, well, I can't handle you being in the hospital. It's just too hard for me.
Well, I guess that's a good time to find out.
I do think people need a greater tolerance for difficult conversations and difficult experiences. Like you can't escape from those things. And that's what I think people try to do a lot of times. So the difficult conversation, that's a skill to learn. Just practice with the person.
Last week. How to have difficult conversations.
Yeah. I think everybody needs to practice that, because obviously it's difficult, and yet we need to always be practicing, because life seems to be filled with difficult conversations. So it's a good skill to have, to be able to breathe through the anxiety or the intensity of a difficult conversation, and to be able to sit and touch in with your embodied experience and get to those deeper emotions that are there that you might gloss over in most scenarios, and really make contact with them and speak to them and not be afraid that you'll be shamed or rejected for speaking to those experiences. Easier said than done.
Well, I think a lot of failure has to happen for that. I think all those things you mentioned are going to happen, and it's, can you grow through them and then pass the fear? It's like, oh, we worked through this already. I don't have to be afraid. Face everything and rise type of thing.
There has to be a huge level of empathy there, I would think, too, right? And knowing the person who you're conversing with, or at least trying or respecting that they may have a different communication style from you.
Well, I also think don't date sociopaths if you don't have the empathy.
Oh, dear.
That's your red flag.
Well, I think with like cheating, for example, okay, so it's okay if you're not into monogamy, but if you made a monogamous commitment to someone and all of a sudden you're thinking about breaking that, talk to them first and propose having an open relationship if you really want it that badly. Otherwise, you're just doing it to be transgressive, right?
I agree. I 100% agree. And I really think that that's where most relationships fail, is they fail to revisit their agreement with each other. It doesn't matter how many years you've been together, been married, whatever. Things will change, and maybe like your taste or your desires or your curiosities might change, and you hopefully would have enough open communication with your partner to revisit that agreement, right?
So what does transgressive mean? Like trying to get out of a relationship, or just trying to hurt the other person?
Transgressing the norm, crossing the boundary.
Yeah, see, I often find people cheat because they want a reason to get out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then why not just have the conversation and say, I want out?
They're afraid. Yeah.
Right. But can you believe that someone would rather go through the experience of sneaking behind their partner's back, having an illicit affair, hurting their partner, having it come out eventually, having there be a lot of animosity, and having it break up that way, rather than just sitting down and having the painful and difficult.
Rip the Band-Aid off fast?
In my experience with my ex-partner, I believe that he thrives on drama. And when I stopped buying into the monthly drama, which I no longer had energy for, he had to find that drama elsewhere. And that included the way the relationship ended.
Yes.
And I think it just
conflict
gave
style.
some crazy satisfaction to have this drama. And
I agree with that I think some people like the drama.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and so since we're on cheating for a moment, one of the counseling advice that I still kind of adhere to is, if you cheat, do you tell your partner? So somebody cheated, do you tell your partner? And because the client always wants to feel better. I'll feel better if I tell them. You will, absolutely. You will feel better if you tell them. Because you've now taken the burden from you,
right?
The choice, and you put it on them to make a choice.
Exactly.
Out of self-respect, do I leave you, or do I disrespect myself and stay when there's no amends on your part? So now you've said, I'm sorry, and I cheated on you and put you in this situation. And they're like, well, of course I feel horrible, and you cheated on me, and worse, you feel better. All this weight's off your shoulders.
Right.
And they're like, well, I feel so much better. I told you. Well, yeah, now you put all the burden of choice on me when you're the one who chose to transgress. And, it's like, if you want it out, just say so. Oh, you want to stay in the relationship. How do I know you're going to cheat again? You probably will. You feel bad about it, but now that you told me, you can just tell me again, and you won't feel bad anymore. It's created a pattern, whether they've realized it or not. Because there's no consequence.
I mean, there should be a psychological consequence of just feeling bad that you lied and held on to a secret. And I mean, it takes a lot of energy to keep a secret hidden.
Exactly. So when they tell the partner, they feel relief.
But they can't feel like 100% relief, because they still know they messed up. They were the one who transgressed.
True. It's not 100%, but it's this release of that secret, all that difficulty of holding. yeah, the tension. It's like, oh, I feel so much better. Then when the relationship goes away and there's the absence. So usually the best advice I have for someone who's now been told they've just been cheated on, take a break and separate. Otherwise, there's no pain to help them realize what they may have just lost.
Well, interestingly, when that happened to me, I decided that he was not to leave the bedroom and sleep on the couch, that he would go through my pain with me, because it was only fair. He put that pain on me. He thought that he could now leave. Hell no, you better sit here and you can listen to me cry my heart out all night long, every night for a full week.
That's a really good point, to be honest. Yeah, because I had an ex who, I really like him. He's a very good person, but he couldn't handle conflict at all. Mm-hmm. And I would we'd argue about something. I'd get really angry and he would just leave because he's like, I can't be around you when that would piss me off so much.
The partnership. And, we, at the time we had read all of these books on cheating and how can your relationship, grow from this, or can you even save your relationship? And we found that they actually in these psychology books recommended that the cheating partner not leave, and usually the case is that they just go. They dump everything on their partner and then they go. And they recommended, no, you stay and you try to work it out. And we did actually try to work out that relationship. I thought we tried to save it by going to therapy. So you can get past that. I highly believe you can, but it really takes the work of both partners. And like you said, is the one person truly remorseful and willing to change their habits and the way they communicate? But if they're not, there's no way to salvage that relationship.
Restorative, yeah. How would you restore the peace?
Maybe you can't. I mean, it just depends on what the scenario is, why the person cheated,
Absolutely. And the level of commitment that they have and the desire for open communication, because ironically, the last marriage and family therapist that we saw said, wow, you two actually communicate really, really well with each other. Your level of communication is very high. And I said to her, well, obviously not, because he failed to communicate to me that he wanted to change the nature of the relationship when I kept that conversation open throughout the time that we'd been together and was always willing to revisit it. Are you still cool with this? And how is this moving and going to affect you? And how is your desire to, to make your career take off? How is this working for you? And even though we talked about so many other things very openly, that was the one thing that he couldn't talk about. But yet that is the one important thing in a relationship, is to talk about your relationship. Right?
Well, I think there is a fear of change. So even if
we talk about it, might go away.
Yeah. So it's like you get comfortable in any scenario that you're in, whether or not it's your preferred scenario, or maybe it's an okay scenario, but maybe you're not, totally happy. You're thinking of moving on. But you stay because it's always easier to not change your situation rather.
So it needs practice.
Yeah.
The longer, if you haven't practiced this from the beginning, it's very scary. Oh, what's now? Is this the start of the end?
Well, you'll hear about people say, well, I knew when I was ready to leave, but then I went for another year after that.
Yeah. There's a nurse I've been coaching at work who went through divorce and the same thing, and now that everybody knew but her that the person she dated was not so great, and now he's trying to hurt her with the kids, fighting for custody and things like that, and denying her stuff, visits and connection. But yeah, it's that communication thing.
Having difficult conversations and being amenable to change, and knowing that everything is going to get stirred up and you're going to have to make a bunch of difficult decisions and potentially changes. If you're living with someone, you may have to find a new place to live, which is never a fun experience, right?
That's just, isn't that cowardice of a sort, though?
Which part?
Just the desire to maintain the status quo and not have the difficult conversation, even though you know that it is necessary to the health of your relationship and to not only your happiness, but your partner's happiness.
Well, hold on. First, let me, because I'm not sure where that's happened. Is it before when a problem's happened? It's after it's cheated? Or is it they're thinking about cheating? Where is this difficult conversation on the continuum?
At any point. It's going to be a difficult conversation in the beginning, the middle, or the end, right?
Well, it depends. Like, so I was saying, so the person cheated. They're really remorseful. They love their partner. They realize this was a huge mistake. They want to change it. Now, how would you, there's a lot, as a counselor and whatnot, you'd coach them and like, okay, so how can you bridge this gap to start this communication? Do you tell them or do you not? Or do you just change your behavior and treat them like the best person in the world from now on? Or do you...
I see what you're saying. So after the fact, if the partner doesn't already know, can you make amends by changing your behavior and changing your communication style and maybe save them from the hurt of that knowledge?
Wait, you're saying after a cheating thing?
Well, no, what you're saying is after a cheating thing, but I'm saying even like beforehand, when you're considering moving outside of your monogamous relationship, not to have that conversation seems to be a very cowardly way to act. I mean, I understand it's fear of changing, as I said, the status quo, but good God, the potential for pain there, not to yourself, but to the person you love.
Yeah, that's why I think the conversation should happen ahead of time. But if they haven't, then you can say, all right, let's lay all our cards out on the table. We're just going to create a space right now where we're both going to be try to accept this as compassionately as we can while still being honest about our feelings.
Well,
because you have to have a balance. Like, so if for example, women will often cheat on someone who just cheated on them to even the playing field. Even though they may not like somebody, they'll have a cheat. So the man cheated on her, and then tells her. So she's like, well, I want this relationship, so how do I take my power back? And then she cheats on somebody with somebody she doesn't even like that much, uses him or her. Because that's where often some people suddenly flirt with bisexuality, because they know that. Well, ironically, I've seen this where they think it will hurt the other partner, or that other partners hurt them as much, and it's like trying to get their power back in a different way. Men hurt me, so I'll do this, and then he can't compete. So it's a complication thing. So that's why I was saying, like, both put if we could talk it out, like you were saying, Courtney, I think it would avoid a lot of this.
I think, yeah, the force of habit and emotional ties, like energetic emotional ties, I think is really hard to face sometimes. So if you have a habit, if you've been with someone for a while, whatever, there's a lot of energy invested in the routine of it. Mm-hmm. And it can really be like pushing a boulder uphill in order to make a change.
True.
Right. And I also think the emotional connections, like I've had a relationship where we were so emotionally connected that even though I knew we needed to break up and move on, just because we were going on separate paths from each other, it was so hard to actually disentangle. It felt like, it was just painful to disentangle those deep emotional bonds because they still were there, even though we both potentially recognized that we needed to go our separate ways.
Yeah.
We're still able to be friends?
Yes.
Wow, good for you.
Well, actually, I think that's actually a more possible, like, for people who have that kind of relationship, I think people are afraid of being friends more than being able to be friends.
It might be the sapiosexual part of me. I don't know what it is exactly, but Or it may just be that I don't like having enemies. I don't like, and I still see the good in the people that I've been with. They're still good people. We just weren't totally compatible.
Yeah, I think healthy relationships, if you're not able to be friends with your partner afterward, like personally, then how much did you really let them in? How much did you know them? How much did they know you? Because it was someone you're vulnerable and connected and loved. Now, if they're complete, they do a 180, it makes you question everything.
That would be different. Yeah.
Ooh, how do we get to relationships?
We can talk about relationships the entire time. Commitments, wasn't it? Coping mechanisms. I think relationships and coping are hand in hand.
I'll be right back, you guys.
Yeah, in some ways. Yeah. I don't think you've ever got me back, did you?
No, your video is still not back. Does it show you as broadcasting?
No. As broadcasting, no.
You don't see your picture?
I don't see my picture in the broadcast, no.
But you do on Skype, like you're seeing your video.
I see me on my video, but you don't see me on the video, do you?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, it says you're loading or you're scanning.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem is because I don't seem to have any connectivity issues right now. Huh.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, now that I understand what the issue is and like how to set this up next time,
it'll be a lot easier.
In fact, we could technically reinitiate, and it won't break the broadcast.
Oh, really? Do you want to try that? But then you'd have to call Courtney back as well.
Well, Courtney's here. She's turned off video.
Yeah, I know. So I would hang up, and then you would pop me back on. Would that be it?
Yeah, if you want to just see if that works real quick.
Yeah, let me try that.
All right, we're gonna do the regroup, and I will. Let's see. I still have Courtney, and then I will call Francis. It's thinking. Maybe.
Maybe it's going to let her back in.
Yeah, that's the question. The $1 million answer. I know there's a way to do this before. Hey, you're back.
Oh,
yeah,
there you
we didn't
go.
lose anything. No disconnection.
How do I do this? There we go. Yay!
Yay, you're back.
I could see the both of you anyway, so I don't think it made that much of a difference to me.
It made a difference to me. I could not see her face, so.
Yeah, and it felt like I was interrupting. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I'm going to watch the stream for a second. You guys can keep talking. Make sure it works.
We're talking about relationships.
Oh.
I mean, I'll be honest, like, I don't even know I don't know that I'm qualified to talk about any kind of relationships.
Me neither. That's why I'm like, why am I talking about this? I don't know.
Well, I mean, but you're in seemingly successful relationship at the moment. I have not been in a relationship since that ex who cheated on me.
What works for me works for me. I don't claim it. My strategy would work for anybody else, so I don't feel I have any authority in this matter,
I can't even figure out how to get a guy to ask me out on a date.
Those who can't do teach, so here I am.
There you go. Yeah, just start teaching. Dave knows this. I broke it off. I thought maybe I've mentioned it too with a karmic relationship a few weeks ago. And this is you were saying earlier how like some people like, no, okay, now it's time. And then they stay in the relationship for an additional year.
Yeah.
I stayed in that relationship for 5 years. I don't know. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah. So probably 5 years longer than I should have.
Wow.
As a friend, just as a friend, and realized that I was limiting myself and my ability to have a healthy romantic relationship with anybody else as long as this person was in my life. Because even though we were just friends and not romantically involved, there was always that energy there of from in his case it was in my case attachment. In his case he was very what's the word, it was like he owned me, like, oh, not, you know what I mean, like not
possessiveness,
very much so, yeah. To the extent that he really thought that I should break off my relationship with a lover, because that's not me. In his eyes it was like, but that's not you. You're not a person who can have a relationship where you're not attached. And my thing was, well, so what if I am attached? I'm just not dating him. And he's just like, but that's not you. That's not the way you are. This is hurting you. And I'm like, I kind of feel like
this is hurting you. Let me tell you what your feelings are. Let me mansplain your feelings to you. Yeah. You're a woman. You don't understand your feelings. Let me mansplain.
Or you're a static individual with an unchanging sense of being, you know?
Yeah. So, you know, of course, I'm thinking, well, it's not hurting me. And if it's hurting you, but you're not admitting it, then there's something wrong there. But how dare you feel this way about me if really all you are is a friend who doesn't want to be in a relationship with me? So,
yeah, you know, I think that's a true test of friendship. If you can literally say, disagree with someone's life choices and you to think what they're doing is very wrong with them, and say, if it makes you happy, I love you. And if you want to go down this road, as your friend, I'm here to support you and help you pick up the pieces after if it falls apart.
Right. If you love them, let them go. It's your
journey. Well, I mean, as a friend, though, like, everyone has to make their mistakes. And I think the friends who stick around when things aren't good, those are your real friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yeah. I have cut out many people in my life because of that reason alone. That here I've been with you, you know, as your faithful friend for 15 years or so, and have been with you through your thick and thin. God knows some of my, you know, ex-friends have, like, you know, drug problems, alcohol, like ridiculous things. And here I was, and the one time I'd be like, can you please call me because I'm in a moment of pain here, to be told, I'm kind of busy right now. Immediately makes me say, we're done. We're done.
Kind of busy right now. Are those gunshots in the background? Okay, you can call me back after you're done saving the world.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, remember we were talking last week, Francis, about the equal exchange. Yeah. So anytime you say you're a coach or a psychologist, I actually really think this is important to see the other person as your equal, and you are equally exchanging. You have maybe an expertise, they have money, that's an equal exchange there, or even in a friendship, equal exchange in a friendship. Yeah. So that friend needs to be aware of how much you've helped them.
Yes.
Oh, that's my big issue with the coaching world too, because I see everyone. In fact, we're even taught as coaches, everyone is perfect and has the answers inside them. You just help them get to them. And yet, you have to put yourself out there as this very special person who can get them to those answers, and this unique skill, which elevates you. And it's like, well,
you have a unique skill, but they have a unique skill that you don't have. Maybe not in the coaching realm, but right?
Well, energetic services, you know, it's that pain. And it's like, how do I balance the exchange? So I think you're absolutely right.
Or, you know, if the other person doesn't have a skill that you would desire, for example, what do they have? They have money. Money is very important in our society. We need money to survive. So you may have this awesome skill that sets you apart from everyone else, but they have the money that you need.
Well, yes, and the money is an investment in themselves. So for those who are willing to, I mean, that's actually why I just chose to just up my rates, was if someone's going to work with me, I want to make sure they're invested in their own growth. not just. And so I think the money is also, that's the one thing they're bringing to the table as well, is a commitment.
It's true, because I was telling Francis that the coaching clients or the advising clients I was working with for free, just in terms of practicing the coaching modality I had learned, I mean, they just dropped off the face of the earth. Absolutely no commitment, because it was free, so you don't have to be committed.
Yeah, I think free consultations are okay because you have no expectation. Like, you just want to practice 40 free sales pitches. Here's what 10 minutes of coaching's like. Here's what coaching is, and educate them. And if you want to keep working, yes, no. That's your free right there. It's like coffee.
It's like coffee?
Yeah, you go for coffee and say, here's what coaching is. All right, here's 10 minutes of coaching. Would you like me to be your coach? The session will cost this much, and it's much longer.
Yeah, I just think that it is very healthy to think of an equal dynamic rather than a hierarchical one, because I think that is a huge problem in the helping professions, even with psychologists and clients, where one person is the savior or one person is the knowledgeable, experienced one. And I just don't think that's actually helpful. Like, when I went to my therapist, I felt like it was an equal exchange. She had a lot of skills and she had a different perspective than I had. So I would tell her things I'd been thinking about and get her perspective and think, she thinks about that really differently than I do. Okay, that's helpful. Like, it brings me out of my little bubble of perspective. And I think those are healthier dynamics. Wouldn't
we be in a lovely world if just everybody thought that about everybody else?
That would be so lovely.
The CEO who depends on the admin to do everything, but yet she makes like maybe a tenth of what he's making a tenth of what she's making, whatever. There's no equality there.
I know this, or the CEO who looks at the lowest person cleaning the bathroom or standing on the mechanical line and sees how integral that person is to the functioning of the whole.
Yeah.
I mean, there are different roles.
Star Trek universe, my ideal.
Yeah, but that's Empire. I don't know.
What do you mean Empire?
No. Not Star Wars.
Star Trek is Empire. The Federation is an empire that everyone must fall in line with.
UN.
No, well, United Federation of Planets, and then they all have to donate money in a fleet, and they contribute to the exploration. And if you want to be in the Federation or join up, this is elite military. You have to go through this academy and this process of indoctrination and choose a class. Well, no, it's true, because you have to understand that you're not supposed to interfere with other cultures that are not a part of the Federation or not a part of this awareness of your collective galaxy. So, yeah, it's indoctrination.
For their own good, though.
That's what Empire always says.
That's what, I was going to say, look at the capitalism, and exactly, we're going to other countries to help you become less primitive and more civilized. Use our tea and our exports and check out our cool religions. And your religion's outdated. You don't really understand science and how it works.
How did we get onto Star Trek? Oh, the hierarchies.
Well, actually, but lawyers, accountants, medical doctors have created that power dynamic you were talking about, Courtney. You're an expert. You're going to this person. That's why I struggle in the hospital so much.
Well, I wonder, though, if that isn't something that the patient, just in the health industry, if that's not something that the patient needs. You know what I mean? To be able to look up to one person, and I mean, really, it's a stranger you're going to, and to have an instant trust for this stranger and take what they're telling you and do it, right? I mean, why should I go to some random person who's saying, okay, well, you have this infection and here, take these drugs. I'm depending on their level of education.
Well, okay, so yeah. There has been research shown that if someone walks in with a white lab coat, they are more likely to be trusted, right? With just the lab coat on, without any prior knowledge
or any
of who
uniform.
this person is, right? So the difference here being that people are different. Some people, you know, in the best case scenario here, those of us who pursue higher degrees, we like learning. We like knowing lots of stuff. We want to be skilled at our profession. So we pursue these advanced degrees and advanced training. So we just have put in a lot more time to learn a particular subject.
Right.
So someone can come to you knowing that you're an expert, but you're still equals.
Yeah, I like to use the word specialists
Right,
because
specialists, yeah.
because they're technical training, and with like law and you know, a
Right.
tax code, these are all man-made creations. With medicine, it's your helping profession, working with vulnerable people, which is where a lot of these, like the hospital policies and everything, like everyone wants me to be their therapist after I work with their clients, or you know, their kids, or these people. Hey, will you be my therapist? We had great connection. It's like, hospital policy, I can't. You know, I can't use the hospital to get clients, and I'm just a visitor in your life. You're a vulnerable person. You're feeling some attachment right now. Your feelings, you don't know your feelings. I get to explain them away to you, and that's why we can't have a relationship in a professional or romantic way. And that's counseling and therapy. As a psychologist, you're not allowed, depending on the state, to have a romantic relationship with a patient for some states it's 2 years, other states it's 7 years. But doctors, lawyers, accountants don't necessarily have that, or nurses. Yeah, they're dealing with vulnerable patients. There's no year limitation to how long. Yeah, the surgeon who saved your life, you can still marry them next week.
Oh,
So,
yeah, right.
About the person, what is it about humans where we will take certain people and rise them above our own selves, like a doctor, for example, because of their level of expertise? Yeah,
Earning potential.
you think it can be, well, but here's the thing. How about my mechanic? He's got a level of expertise that I could never reach, and his earning potential maybe, well, definitely the plumber was making more than my mother, the doctor. Yeah, that was hysterical. That her patient, the plumber, was making twice her rate, yet we don't put them on an equal level to ourselves.
Well, people, I think that medicine is more specialized than plumbing. Yeah?
Is it?
No,
I
really,
don't know.
it's.
I don't know. I mean, I respect plumbers. Plumbing is a nasty thing.
Well, I would just say it's the cost of entry and the difficulty of entry. That's the elitism. It's very difficult to get into law schools. It's very difficult to get into med school.
And there's actually fewer plumbers now than there are doctors. So because of just supply and demand, your mother was making less because there were more doctors than there were actually plumbers available.
But so why would you put like the doctor on the pedestal and kind of look down on the plumber, knowing that the plumber is more necessary and is as necessary for your life's function, and you know?
And it comes back to the hierarchy of like money, like I was mentioning for the PsyDs, for a lot of women who were being supported by their husbands so they could get this great degree. And
it's not money, because if the plumber's making more than the doctor, so then that's
to go to med school, it used to cost a lot of money, even because you're not working.
Still does cost.
It's the initial investment.
But plumbers often worked off of trade skills, often work off apprenticeships. You work for a lesser cost. You're getting maybe a third or 2/3 of what they make, and you're their apprentice, or you're getting, and eventually you can start on your own.
I mean, I think it's the complexity. I mean, I think the human body is more complex than a plumbing system.
Anybody can learn plumbing, but can everybody, if you spend enough time and work on it enough, you can learn plumbing. But can you, and then they have certifications for all different types of plumbing, and, you know, the advanced industrial, and depending on the chemicals used. But yeah, for a doctor, there's so many different kinds of doctors. You have to specialize. Everybody can go to med school. But then what are you going to do? You're going to be a knee surgeon? Right.
I mean, I will say I've had some really bad experiences with doctors who I felt acted unethically. So have I had a bad experience with a plumber? No, I have not. I've dealt more with doctors than I have with plumbers. So.
And an unethical plumber is somebody who goes through your house or does something without asking and charges you.
Right. Whereas an unethical doctor does more violating things, I would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Violating of your personal safety and your body, and
they're making a decision based off their expertise of what's right for you instead of asking. You're supposed to give consent.
I think with doctors too, that you're putting your life in the hands of a doctor, so there's a higher level of trust, and vulnerability there. With the plumbing, they may screw your plumbing up, but you're not going to die if they do that.
True. Well, so maybe then the equal energy exchange really has to be monetary.
Well, and that's the excuse for the therapy stuff, why you can't date your patients after you need 2 to like 5 years, is that specifically, again, we're going to the patriarchal, men are therapists, histrionic women who don't understand their feelings are going to therapists. They don't know. So I'm getting vulnerable information I could use on them, as if women are going to be mind controlled by the therapist.
Or blackmailed, yeah.
Or blackmailed, like, the power dynamic. But since often therapists, there's a big shift to therapists being women, especially counselors. Now, psychologists are often still men, and people will expect the psychologist to be a man, yet the counselor or social worker is still expected to be a woman, working, caring, and yet, you're giving your time and your energy, and you're not making much money, because you're just, supported by a man.
It's emotional labor. It's emotional labor, which is paid less than. Yeah,
and it's worse hours and it's harder stuff. But again, there's that whole power dynamic. So they have those years that have to go by. So if you really do, maybe years later, you reconnect 5 to 7, you went through a difficult time, this high intense experience, then you can make an adult decision. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I think that you recognize that people are equal, but that they just have different skill sets, but that there are boundaries and rules in place for interaction in certain professions for good reason.
The public, yeah.
Right.
And I think colleges have a no fraternization policy. Most of them do. Professors and students.
Oh, please tell me about this, because, I was arguing with a friend of mine recently, and we weren't arguing, but we were talking about this, and we both took a class from one professor who was Francis, we were talking about this last week, I think. Very animated professor, a great lecturer, obviously a brilliant man, who later, after we had graduated from the college, I spoke to a friend who was a few years older than me, who had been more in that department. And she was like, oh, that professor, he slept with so many of his students. And I went, oh my gosh. And my friend was like, oh, I don't care. And I was like, well, what, you don't care? And I was like, there's a power dynamic here. This is an ethical issue. And she was like, whatever, they're adults. And I was like, no.
No, the question is, did he sleep with those students while they were students?
I think so.
Well, that was the implication, right? And I remember in undergrad in a marketing class, of all things, I remember we had this discussion, and I come out of left field and I'm like, but what if it's the student who approached the professor, and I mean, like that, and made it so that I think the point that I've been trying to make.
The student often does approach the professor.
Yeah, and the point that I was trying to make and couldn't explain myself was, it's more than a professor-student dynamic. You have in this case, a male-female dynamic, right? And what if the student was very attractive and very, I don't know, let's say alpha or whatever, and was got to it wasn't necessarily that the professor had the power in the dynamic, but the stronger person had the power, and it could have been the student. And
I think in that situation, it's that the professor is grading is responsible for the success of the student, right?
Because and that was that was the rebuttal. Like, my professor was like, no, you don't understand. The professor will always have the power because the professor will do the grading.
Or like the boss and the employee, the boss can just fire the employee if something happens, right? Or so I can remember having this discussion about Young having an affair with his secretary.
Right.
And it's like, well, yeah, maybe.
And his patients.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Ooh.
Have you seen keep going.
I couldn't stand that movie if that's what you're talking about.
Yes, that's the movie.
I don't remember what it's called, but I couldn't stand it.
Dangerous Method.
Oh, I hated that. We could talk about that another time.
Really good in that regard. Yeah, keep going.
That maybe the woman felt powerful by attracting a powerful man, by having a relationship, but there's still that unequal power dynamic because the boss can always fire.
Nowadays, though, I mean, the student could be seen as the victim and equally affect the professor's, his job.
The dynamics of power are not as clear cut as we would like them to be to adjudicate in these matters, right?
Right.
It's
how many
shadowy.
And rightly so, there's so many men who are losing their jobs right now because of these women who are coming forth. But this whole issue with Senator Franken, I mean, there's so many women who actually came forward to support him and say, look, okay, so come on.
The question was it sexual assault or sexual harassment? And he's in the gray area.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like, okay, did he grab her ass? Yes. Is that a sexual assault or a sexual harassment at a fair in a photo op? And did he make women feel uncomfortable? Or was did he make some gestures and comments and invitations that were inappropriate? Yes.
Just fire them all. I don't.
I guess I would say if the woman remembered the incident after so many years, that it was so scarring for her mentally and emotionally that she recalls this situation and brings it up, then yeah, there must have been something there. I can't tell you the number of times my ass has been grabbed.
Yeah, well, most women are, used to this sort of thing, but that's why I think everyone should just be fired or everyone should resign, and we can just start from a blank slate because.
Well, here's the thing.
I agree. It never happened, but I agree.
Accidentally, brushes his hand against your ass because it's crowded. Are you going to turn around and be like, oh my God, what is, do you know how many times I've accidentally grabbed a guy's dick?
I think so. That's but it's always the apology and the attention. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. It is a crowded place I'm going through. It's like, oh, I bumped you. And it's like, sorry.
Aware of it, or you're just like, holy cow, okay, that guy I just passed him and he's like that.
I'm flailing around and
my good friend in Japan, in Tokyo, the trains around rush hour get very packed. And he said that whenever he is in a train, he always puts both hands up onto the railing so that he does not accidentally hit someone or do something which would be used against him, and he would absolutely lose his job. He says you would lose your job immediately if you were accused of something.
In Japan?
So, yeah. So he stands up like that the whole time.
There's a horrible. I'm glad that's starting to happen because basically, old men have been groping young women there on trains.
Right. That's the problem. That's been an issue. And so that's why that was his way of dealing with that, is just always keep your hands up above your head, because often on the train line it would lurch, and if it's packed like sardines, you are actually being thrown against the person next to you.
That's how it is in DC too. When you're riding the train, when it's packed, there's only so many handrails, and everyone's bodies are kind of.
But
it's hard to ferret out a person's intention. I mean, I think it's really what it comes down to, right? Intention. And we don't have the ability to read a person's mind and be like, oh, well, you meant to grab my ass.
I mean, just in any scenario, I just think like keep your hands to yourself, keep your comments to yourself, do your job. Don't.
Okay, so now let's add substance abuse in there, or substance use, alcohol, or someone's on painkillers or whatever, and they're using that. Well, I was on this at a time. I was drinking when this happened. And that is the most common excuse I hear all the time. Oh, I was drunk, so it didn't really count.
Oh, no.
You're responsible for your actions.
Yeah, you are.
Well, women are making these excuses for the men. Oh, he was drunk.
No.
And so you see,
that's an excuse. Not acceptable. You decided to drink, and we all have compassion for people who struggle with substance abuse.
Yeah.
Please treat that. Go to a therapist.
And I would say substance use, because a lot of them are not acknowledging it as abuse.
Okay, even that's true. You don't even have to be abusing the substance. But I mean, most of us know that if you drink alcohol, for example, you get
with us lost Courtney.
Goosey, like you are less inhibited. You do things you wouldn't normally do sober. I mean, most people who drink know that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, inhibitions drop. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anything.
But I mean, and that's the thing. That's the difference between a responsible adult who takes that self-responsibility to say, regardless of I don't know if she can hear us because she's frozen.
You can finish your point, and I will reconnect her in a moment if we need.
Yeah, that's a level of awareness there. Is it my responsibility to check the way I act when I'm drunk and sober or not? I mean, maybe that's a level of maturity. I don't know.
Okay, I'm reconnecting to see if she'll.
Yeah. We've been talking for a while. We don't have anybody listening to us, so I don't know if you want to continue.
We'll see if Courtney reconnects. I don't want to just end it on that.
Yeah, of course.
Call failed. I think, there we go. Call failed. Let's try again.
Yeah.
I actually really like the setup, though, that I can at least, like, as a dashboard, to kind of see, we can reconnect it. And then, like, I'm watching my laptop and able to connect, and we're chatting that way.
So this is a better setup for you for next week?
It's consistent. I know exactly how to do it. Like, it's reliable. There we go. There's Courtney.
Oh, something happened with my internet connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were guessing. And it was, I think, Mercury in retrograde, right, when we were talking about holding people accountable to the loosey-goosey alcoholism. And
retrograde, for God's sake.
And the gods of substance abuse said, okay, God of technology, shut her down before she talks about this anymore.
Neptune was like, let me set a flood of water over to shut her internet connection down.
American Gods it got this very interesting. Neil Gaiman created this idea that thought forms, basically, gods exist based off people's beliefs. And the more someone believes or gives attention to it, the stronger the god gets. So the god of highways, the god of internet, the god of technology, the god of oil.
Yeah,
the god of retribution.
I like that perspective, that Neil Gaiman perspective. It's an interesting one, and the more people think about a particular entity, the stronger it will grow, because it's almost like you create the thought form and you keep adding attention to it.
Yeah.
So it grows, or
manifesting that.
The god of Jack Daniels.
Case of being, an actual being that is a god. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, in traditional planetary mythology, like Uranus, I think, would rule the internet, because Uranus would be the planet of innovation and technology.
Oh, God. Tell Mercury to quit it.
I've never had a problem during Mercury retrograde with any of my technological devices. Huh. The only issue I ever noticed, I was in Australia and I was set to fly back to the US on the day Mercury turned retrograde, and I did have an 8-hour delay.
Oh, interesting.
I find that there's a lot of, it's like people are either like system updates, technology stuff. There's a lot of breakdown in communication on the tech side.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had like on the hospital, they're doing these updates and they gave us these new phones and these new systems. And it seems like Mercury in retrograde, people's tempers get shorter. They have less patience with technology, which seems to contribute to the technology problems. And like they're not using the computer correctly, so it's the technology's fault.
How did people react to Mercury in retrograde way back when, before we, had phones that we could walk around with? You know what I mean?
There'd probably be like letters not being delivered.
But that took like months anyway.
You're not gonna like freak out if like, your lover hasn't, you don't receive a letter from your lover across the sea in like a few days, because that might just be, whatever. But like, good God, my lover doesn't text me back, and I'm like, what the hell is this problem?
Because we rely on technology so much more now. So then when we have, when we have little problems with it, they seem much bigger and more momentous than maybe they would have in the past when we relied less on technology.
The immediacy, like we need to have this now, and now Mercury in retrograde is become such an issue because we don't get that immediacy for whatever is being affected. I don't know.
It's I often have to coach parents about their kids, and because millennials have a whole different problem than people my age, or I think, and I won't guess to your ages, but I didn't grow up with the internet. Technically, I was in high school when the internet first came out. It was dial-up. It was so slow. Email was barely a thing.
I was in junior high. I mean, you can guess David and I are similar in age. We're close to each other.
I was after college.
And broadband wasn't a thing until college.
That's the thing is I can remember in college we had Napster, but we didn't really use the internet all that much in college. I think I can remember looking up basic informational things maybe at that point, but we didn't rely on it.
Yeah, Yahoo and Google were big deals, and what happened was my generation suddenly realized you didn't have to listen. You could Google what your parents told you, and you're like, this is it. No, it isn't. You Google, it's like, oh my gosh, this is how it actually works. My parents were lying to me. And don't do drugs, kids, because this works this way, and people start actually Googling drugs.
It works the other way around too. Like that's on the parents. I would not lie to my son. I would be like, as I know it,
But you weren't lying. My parents were teaching family systems and stuff they believed was true. So that's not lying.
Taught my kid to do his research. And if he asked me a question, I would say, this is how I understand it. This is what I know. However, things might have changed. Go look it up. Or, and his teenage years was not as difficult, I think, as it was for other.
Well, when you say look it up, you could go to the internet. When I was growing up, I'd have to go to the library, find an Encyclopedia Britannica.
Look it up on the library. Or you would have to take your parents' word. But, my mother also raised me to, she didn't lie. Of course I took her, because I would have to go to the library. Reconnecting, your connection is poor. Sorry. So look it up under the Encyclopedia Britannica, but since I raised my son the same way, if he thought that I was wrong, I would just let it go, because I would say, well, I could be wrong, given new information that's arisen, but this is what I know from the last thing that I read. And this is actually going back to the ex-boyfriend, right? He would often tell me that I was wrong about many things. And I learned much later that he's a narcissist. I couldn't possibly be right. How would I know? I rarely did my research. And I would say, well, I remember reading this. And he would actually directly to my son, tell my son, no, that's not right. She doesn't know how to do that. So one thing was, after running, I would say you have to put your arms up like this and breathe. Okay, I was in track in high school. Okay. Yet my musician ex-boyfriend said, no, that's wrong. You have to put your head down so that and he would give this huge explanation.
Well, both are right. It depends on what you're trying to do. This opens up the intercostal muscles and allows you to breathe more. Putting your head down between your legs allows blood flow to go to your head. Are you dizzy or lightheaded?
A long run. You don't do that after and a sprint too. And these were my events in high school in track.
No, I just lie down on the ground like.
So the thought that for this child it was just like, oh, my mother's constantly wrong, until he started looking it up himself. And after that relationship had ended, he actually came back to me and apologized and said, you were right about so many things. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I chose to believe this other person. And I said, well, then that's why you have to look it up. Find out what the latest research.
He believed the more forceful person.
The person who just talked a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there's a whole lot of social psychology about that one.
Yes, there is. Yeah. The loudest voice, the squeakiest wheel, whatever.
And people who talk a lot.
In my experience, they're usually full of hot air. So I don't subscribe to that. But yeah.
That's why I love the internet, because you can now look everything up
on your phone and be like, hold on, let me check that.
Yeah, so that comes back to the whole generational thing. Is now when I'm educating parents, it's like they don't disappointment and waiting. That's not. It's like when the connection goes.
Yeah.
30 seconds to a minute. That's like too long. And when we were setting up, we had a bunch of viewers initially, but we had 15 minutes of me couldn't figure out my audio or why things weren't syncing up. I could, everything was reading green on my side, but you guys couldn't hear me. And, things like that. And it's just like the attention of people is 7 minutes now. You shouldn't do YouTube videos more than 7 minutes.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
And I post 30-second sound bites on the Earth Connect website for, something that you can watch while you're on your lunch break. No more than 3 minutes.
Yeah, and now on Coffee Meets Bagel, they've got this thing each day. They ask a question. You can record I think it's a 10-second clip, which you have to answer. And then people scroll through them because they want you to be able to view people and kind of see them and hear their video, and then you can connect worldwide, which doesn't work so great in my opinion.
Some things take longer than 7 minutes to describe and talk about and analyze. And
if people are really interested, they'll watch it.
Invest, yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise you're supposed to edit down all your and just to the most narrow, focused, intense content. And if you can switch screens, it's even better. Like look here and then look there and look here and look there. So if I have multiple cameras, it's just become this huge novelty.
You catch their interest right away. So when you're writing these blog posts, all of these, all these articles I'm reading are saying, oh, you have to do 5 ways to do this, 10 methods of blah, blah, blah.
It's listicles. It's listicles.
Yeah, they're calling them ranking videos or ranking topics now because you want to rank, should be in the top whatever list. To do that, you need to answer a question or give somebody, everyone considers their time so limited because there's so much content out there. So for example, if we're doing this again next week, we would want to ideally start with, hi, everybody. Welcome to Facebook Live. This is what our topic is today. Bear with us. We're dealing with some technical difficulties. Now, if you can't hear me, that doesn't work. Right. But if I pre-recorded a video and had that play and had it in the background before I switched over to the live thing, that would work.
I mean, I'm shocked that anyone would sit and pay attention to this conversation, which is just going all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, Monday Morning Musings is we're supposedly just rambling, but, there are people who, if they catch you at the right time, catching you in discussing a topic that they find of interest, we'll sit and wait and be like, how will this flesh out? It's a really voyeuristic sort of situation.
Well, so, and also the stats are showing that a lot of people watch Facebook Live muted.
Oh, really? Why?
Yeah. They want to see what's
that?
interesting. So, like, they can tell when interesting conversation's happening. Now, there is some way apparently to, like, have it subtitle. I haven't looked quite into that yet. But yeah, things like that.
Well, and
because you're watching it work.
You weeks ago said, "Hey, let's start doing this live thing between the two of us," because you had said to me that I am an animated speaker, which I am. I use my hands a lot, and my inflection goes up and down all over the place. And you're just like, and I'm chill, and I'm like, yeah.
And you're chill.
You're chill.
You're the chill one, David.
I don't know about that, but I'll try.
Yeah, that's interesting. God, I love this. I feel like we're sort of in an online salon right now. So I would love to continue this with you too, Courtney.
Well, I think we should, and especially as the technology. And part of why I wanted initially, Frances, you to do it is so you want to do more speaking, you want to do this stuff, and you were so in your head about how you should get out on YouTube and do this. My point, the reason I want to do this, and I'm going to do videos about how to set up the software and things like, especially as I get more of it down, is to kind of help people get out there, because people with less experience, less knowledge are doing this. Some not just high school education, and they're making shit up as they go.
Yeah, I think
experts.
most of us who have the advanced degrees need to do this. And I mean, for me, I'm like appreciative to be here because I'm constantly reading and writing and not interacting in person, and it's driving me batty. And I really like speaking in person. I really like the spontaneous conversation, and even public speaking I like, but I have had absolutely no opportunity for that as someone finishing a PhD. So
I personally love what you bring to the table because you are so knowledgeable, and my God, your brain is like a sand trap. You just like spat out, oh, this book from blah, blah, blah. I'm like, how the hell? Do you know, I have actually watched entire movies and read entire books a second or third time because I completely forgot that I had seen or read that before.
I forget movies easily. I see a movie and I could love it, and a couple months later will not remember what happened in the movie. I don't know. That's a different kind of memory. I just don't have that one. But
same with books. I was like, I opened up a journal the other day from like, I don't know how many years ago. Dozens of years ago, and I open it up and it's talking about, oh, this book I'm reading, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what is that? I don't remember this. What is this about?
You know, so there was ages ago when I tried to market my business doing the whole online thing, the video was like, you need to do video. And, you know, I had a really crappy phone. I was trying to, with a bad microphone, and you could hear airplanes going overhead and everything. And, telesummits were like, oh, what you really should be doing is telesummits, because people love telesummits, all these different experts and this novelty thing. Well, I think video, what we're doing right now, is going to replace all of that, because right now people, yes, they're watching YouTube video content and they like the short things, but being able to to listen or see experts interact. And I'm sure you can relate to this, Courtney, where if you're trying to talk on something on your own or lecture, you go in your head and you start coming with all this other stuff. And then people can tune out after, 5 to 7, 15 seconds. And you're like, okay, no, come back, a minute and a half. That's great. But with your other people on the screen, there's visual, there's communication, there's back and forth, and you never get stagnant.
Well, I think, people really love podcasts these days. I think that's part of it. It's just nice to be able to hear a conversation between two people, for example, right? It's that living entity aspect of an ongoing conversation. It feels natural. I mean, I don't actually listen to very many podcasts myself. I tend to just listen to a couple that like interviewing experts on certain topics. But I know podcasts are very popular, and I think it's for that reason. Video, of course, adds the
technically this
component.
Is the new podcast.
Yeah.
That's why it's so surprising what you said, that people mute Facebook Live.
That's a Facebook Live thing, because mainly they're scrolling through the feed. I think we should definitely move this sometime to Twitch format, because they've got an IRL channel where people just want to see other people in real life having these conversations. What's your life like? Like, Francis, you're in your, looks like a dining kitchen area.
Yeah.
You can see I'm in my little studio type whatever where I do my thing. And
voyeuristic tendencies.
Well, it's curiosity, not just voyeurism. Everyone wants to know what other people are doing, what their lives are like, and normalization of emotions and craziness.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. If you can figure out how to stream on both Twitch and Facebook Live at some point.
I can't do it on Facebook Live and Twitch, I discovered, without paying $15 a month for a custom broadcast thing.
Ah.
And that's Restream. It even posted a Destiny thing I did ages ago, despite me deleting that. I don't know why.
Oh, weird.
So I can choose which one I do, Twitch or Facebook. But Twitch's broadcast medium has a comment and a chat thing. So very much like this, but it's a better chat program.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it is, so the idea is, let's say Courtney mentions a book, she could type it in the chat with a link, find that link, and other people can communicate, and it allows the chat to be this ongoing, just like we're doing Facebook Live where lots of people comments, but Facebook doesn't refresh very well. It's got that time refresh thing, I'm sure you've noticed.
Yeah, I don't love the Facebook mechanisms. So.
And all of them compete with each other. So they'll if they were listening to the dialogue of this, they would be very upset if I was linking to YouTube or to a Twitch link.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah.
They can be as upset as they want.
And they would downrank the video,
It's
so
all about the product. How useful is the product? And if there's another product that's more useful, then we're going to use it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Sure.
So it's just, I think we should definitely do this in different formats. Now, I'm also recording this right now, so we could cut it together and we can upload it to YouTube. So we could add it on another medium and then say, oh, here's the link for those who want to watch it.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah, for future. I'm just doing a sample.
Yeah, I'll post on my Facebook when you get that done.
Yeah, Twitch calls them VODs, videos of the day. So people can, they're streaming and then they're recording and then they cut them together, the highlights, and then put the VODs up.
Cool. All right. So thank you guys. I really do enjoy this.
Yeah, if you want to do it again next Monday.
I want to do it again.
All right, cool.
Oh, wait, I can't next Monday, though. I think I'm traveling.
What's Monday?
On the plane. Hey, we're connecting right now. We're live.
I might be able to do it before I leave, but I'll probably be packing, and so it's not going to happen.
Well, people want to see you packing, apparently.
That's an IRL channel.
A minimalist wardrobe for a 1 week trip out of town.
That'd be a good 5-minute YouTube video. You'd probably get a lot of hits.
That's a very popular topic right now. Like, how do you pack just to carry on for a longer vacation? And I'm just going to see my parents, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, life skills surprisingly are one of the biggest YouTube topics.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't teach that in school anymore. And
well, our parents. I mean, this is stuff your parents didn't teach you.
But when you're with your kids, really, you have very little actual time with them, teaching time, because you're shuttling them between places, and when you're not, they're doing their homework.
Yeah.
Or you're trying to get ready yourself. Go pack your bags. Let's see how you did. What'd you bring?
I mean, the weird thing is, like, one of my loveliest memories of my son, he was in middle school. He might have even been a freshman in high school. He came and he came to my bathroom, and I started to brush my teeth, and he was just standing there and watching me, which, okay, it's a little bit creepy, but he's your kid. So, I'd be like, what do you want? I'm just like, okay, I'll just go about brushing my teeth. And he says, Mom, I really like the way you brush your teeth, the way you spread the toothpaste, and like, he made this comment. I was just like,
oh.
Kids learn through observation. Yeah.
Well, in my head, I'm like, what a weird thing to say. This is so strange.
I used to do that, though. I used to hang out in my mom's bathroom and, like, watch her do her hair.
Her makeup. And I had to remember that. Like, wait a minute. I did this when I was a kid. I did it so much more than my son's one time that he did it. I used to do it all the time. I've seen my mother wash her face, put on her makeup, brush her teeth, everything, the whole gamut.
I used to also do it with my with one of my exes, where he would like be shaving, and I'd be like, "I'm gonna watch you shave your face." Wow.
Dad, I've seen my dad shave. I watched him shave. I watched him put pomade in his hair and put little, I mean, like, we used to do that when we were kids. But like my son, he's done it once. Like, and I know that because I remember it so well. So we actually don't spend that much time with our children and those teaching them. And we teach them by letting them watch, right?
I learned to cook from watching my mom.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Put on makeup to a certain extent from watching my mother.
Exactly. So that's probably
that's why makeup videos are so popular. Like, how do I look that pretty and beautiful? Like, that's one of the things that blew up this whole YouTube market.
I totally watch all those makeup videos. And
I watch them. I watch them because it's like all the eyeshadow techniques and stuff. Like, you got to have someone teach you that. That is not. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure some artistic types are more like naturally knowing how to put eyeshadow on their eyes. But I need someone to teach me.
The amount of like product that you can go out there and buy, it's overwhelming. So it's nice for somebody to be like, here's the mascara I use. Of course, I look it up and I'm like, you use $30 mascara? I don't think so.
Or just people spending a full hour putting on their makeup. I don't have the patience for that. But I think it's cool to watch people who do. Yeah. And often they will speed up where they edit out any laborious, like most people don't let you see how they do their eyebrows because it's too laborious. It takes too long. You would get bored. So usually it's like you'll start to do the eyebrow and then it'll cut to the next thing,
Well, there's a Twitch streamer I just started watching I randomly found her. She was listed on Twitch as a main page, and she was doing Harley Quinn. She dresses up as Harley Quinn and does Harley Quinn makeup, and she's some Swedish person. It was a weird time, and does cosplay stuff. So she shows how to do her makeup and dresses, and does like paper things and really like how to look like Poison Ivy, and like you can watch her hours of getting set up as she's communicating with,
It's like watching someone play a video game. Why is that more interesting than doing it yourself sometimes? Right?
It's and the reactions. And it's like my roommates were watching Hearthstone, and that's a card game where and the games are of just a few minutes each, and then they're kind of speaking their thought process. That's how you're supposed to play it. Even when I've been Twitch streaming recently of League of Legends, I find when I talk about what I'm doing, I'm less reactive. And unless, it's like, oh, I'm intellectualizing all of my emotions and my processes and my plays. So other people who are watching can see them and understand what I'm going through. But also I don't tilt is what they call it. And where the board gets tilted and you get angry, it's like tilts for the arcades or pinball machines they used to be. You tilt them.
Yeah.
And if you tilt it too much, you broke it. It locks the game. It's done. And so you don't want to get tilted in life.
In 5th grade, I used to play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the Nintendo with my friend who had it. And it was fun because we would swear. We would be like, you motherfucker, I'm going to get you. And it was like the most cool thing for a 5th grader to be able to do because you could swear, use swear words and you'd be like beating up the bad guys. And I get it. I do get it.
Thing now. Yeah.
I don't do it anymore, but
so Twitch is like this YouTube stuff. It's just entertainment. It's not even the content itself. It's just watching another person do that, and you feel a part of their world. Especially when they respond to you, when they type something, and you're like, "Hey, thanks for showing up."
A psychosociological comment there about isolation and community, and
we see connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should talk about that next week.
We should, especially, and maybe brainstorm some ideas about how to create it. I know even all of us technically need more of it. I don't think I met anyone who doesn't need more connection.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a lot of shame around that for people too. They want to have enough friends and be okay.
Are you better with like texting or Facebook messaging?
That's the question or the topic?
For you, I'm asking you specifically. Are you better with, and both of you, better with Facebook
texting?
Whichever one gets to me.
I don't like Facebook, so I try not to be on there.
Yeah. So if I do a iPhone text like group where the three of us are like, hey, what are we talking about next week?
Oh, group text work for me. Some people's, if you have an older phone, group text don't work, and that's why Facebook messaging became popular. But now that most people actually have smartphones, group text work more often.
Okay. Yeah, I have a phone, so that works for me.
Oh yeah, just bat some ideas around. What a weird thing. Bat some ideas around.
What is it?
Is that even a thing?
I didn't hear what you said. Bats something?
Bat some ideas? Are you batting it like this?
Ideas
or are you
around.
batting it like this?
I think, yeah, you're batting. You're hitting ideas. The ball is your idea.
But if you just take a ball and just kind of, that's batting it around too. I like kind of pushing it around like that. Right?
I say toss some ideas around. Let's toss some ideas around. Brainstorm. Brainstorm.
English is such an interesting, everything's metaphorical. It's weird.
Everything has a lot of, I'm thinking about storm, batting, tossing, wasting, killing, like killing time. I realize I've tried not to say that anymore because I'm like, what?
You're absolutely right. You're right. Everything is abrasive and violent, and we're gonna break this down. We're gonna deconstruct it.
Wow.
Reduce it.
Well, deconstruction is fine.
But deconstruction, you're gonna take it apart intellectually, or you're going
that's what I mean. I'm thinking of deconstructionism. I kind of like that mode of inquiry, but
instead of demolish.
Right. Deconstructing in order to peel the layers back to see what exists underneath it all.
It works. Okay. As opposed to just like you build it up and then you knock it down again.
Yeah, not nihilism, not just like raise everything to the ground. But yeah, right. Something's been built up without your knowledge, so you deconstruct it so you can understand how it was built up that way.
Take it apart.
And then recreate it, so reverse engineering. Yeah.
Recreate it in a way that is more healthy and suitable for you and your life and the lives of others.
Reinvent. So it's been invented. Now you're going to reinvent the wheel, make it better.
Okay.
Which is a problem sometimes for a lot of people because they keep trying to do what's already been done. But sometimes that's where the best thing is what people really want. Do it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, most businesses that are successful is not just the novelty people like Bitcoin. Bitcoin, that's what everyone's saying, it's a huge bubble. They don't know what's going to be done with it. And there's a huge Bitcoin market. But at 2021, all the Bitcoin's going to be mined. It's going to be done. There's no more Bitcoin to mine.
How do we know this?
It's an algorithm because you have to. They would have to expand their algorithm and create a new digital algorithm for it, which would be a new currency.
Oh, so they built in an end date to this form of currency.
Yeah, the blockchain just can't get any bigger the way it's designed, so they'd have to redesign the blockchain, which would be a new currency. And so basically it's got a finite date. So in a way it is a bubble, but because that's the only currency that could be used. And then the investment value, because right now it's just an investment tool. It's not a real recognized currency, even if people start using it that way. But it's the first step to the electronic currency system. Bitcoin started it. There's all these other ones that are now getting on the cryptocurrency, and eventually we'll have a universal credit system in which I can pay you via credits. Mm-hmm. Money won't be a thing.
I mean, you can use Bitcoin on overstock.com.
You can. Yeah. Bitcoins are worth like $7,000 a coin right now, but you can use them in small percentages.
Right.
Like point whatever.
Right. I just thought that was funny. I was like shopping for a rug on overstock.com and I was like, oh, look, they take Bitcoin. Wow. And this was a couple years ago. I was like, they're at the front of that.
The challenge is it's easy to steal Bitcoin. Yeah. So hackers broke to a mining center that had been mining it.
Yeah.
Got 150 million. And it's a blockchain. So basically they've got the blockchain. No, if they spend it, there's no consequence. It's not a real currency. If they use it, and you can't tell who has it, it's basically anonymous.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's not like did real money. Oh, you stole my money, or you got my credit cards. I can track where it's being used and where it goes back to. So there's problems to be resolved. But the novelty thing, as soon as it gets over, and then people fix it.
Well, I mean, I definitely understand why people wanted to create an alternative to, Federal Reserve backed government currency. I mean,
yeah, it's being
sense.
used on the dark web a little too much, but
yeah, probably. But I understand why an alternative was conceived, because inflation, for example, and people having absolutely no control over the currency system and how much things cost. And
well, there's a lot of people who were saying that they use Bitcoin to save their finances in Venezuela.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they put all of their money into Bitcoin.
Wow.
Because Venezuelan economy crashed, Francis. It went to the negatives.
Whoa, on Bitcoin, that's kind of
and
crazy.
same with in Greece and a lot of the Euro places. They're putting money into Bitcoin, and then they go to other countries and they can get their money into cash out their money at a place like in dollars where it's stable.
Well, that's kind of cool. Another topic for another day, maybe.
Totally. It's endless
that's
topics.
A huge one. There's always more topics. That's a big one that, interestingly, the mass media has finally picked up on Bitcoin, and they're talking about it finally. So I guess it's reached the critical.
Be aware right now. There's a lot of marketing. There's a pyramid scheme scam going on, basically, especially in San Francisco.
Oh, really?
And Silicon Valley. Yeah, they're trying to teach people about cryptocurrency, and they're charging hundreds of dollars to get in on this crypto mining groups, and how you can spend $4,000 on this ASICs computer, which is basically a computer with a bunch of graphic cards in it, which mine Bitcoin.
Which mines Bitcoin, yeah.
And you can get in on this before the bubble bursts, and you can get coins.
It's too late. It's like if you weren't on the forefront of Bitcoin, don't even at this point. Just.
But
stand
that's okay,
because
we got those new currencies, and you can use these to mine those currencies too, and join our group. Yeah.
Right.
So just be aware. It's around there.
I just thought it was interesting that the mass media, I had in one day I was seeing multiple stories on Bitcoin, and I was like, oh, now you're interested, huh? Okay.
That's because they're threatened by it, and with this new marketing movement, it's gained mass. It's kind of like the legalizing of THC.
Another topic for another day.
All right. I get the message.
Keep going with many, many topics. Yeah, I'm so glad that you're coming in with this, Courtney.
Yeah, I love talking to you guys. So you people, I don't want to call you guys.
It's good.
I'm trying
for
to stop saying that. You people.
I know, but
guys, it's gonna be the new day.
People take that when you say you people, it seems a little
it seems rude, right?
Yeah. As opposed to, you guys, it's so much more casual.
So when I lived in North Carolina, I could say y'all.
Yeah. I actually say y'all. I've said y'all since I was 5 and we went to Texas.
You all. Well, you could say
sense to me.
It's been so fun, you all. No, so you're that sounds ridiculous. So it's been so fun, y'all.
Yeah.
All right now.
Well, y'all, I think is almost its own word.
It is its own word.
Yeah.
Y'all.
It's kind of like the slang, the internet slang. Again, another topic for another day. But
so many topics.
All right. Well, let's keep a tally. If you have a topic, write it down, and then we can go through them on a podcast. Talk about structure, semi-structure our days.
Well, maybe we need to start setting up 10 minutes ahead of time, not at 10, so that if we're actually doing a 10 o'clock thing.
I know. Yeah, I'm looking for full-time work, so my hours.
Good for you.
Shift.
I am theoretically also going to be looking for full-time work.
Well, then we can meet at night or something,
Yeah. Well, until then, my Mondays are completely open, so you have me.
So movie list, if you want to see a good movie, check out Wonder, Julia Roberts, and one of the, what's his name? He's one of the brothers he's one of the Royal Tenenbaum, Wes Anderson actors.
Jason
Owen-
Schwartzman.
Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson.
Yeah, Owen Wilson, Joey Roberts, and it's about a kid with a face deformity. It's really good. It's a great movie, touchy-feely, but also has a lot of social commentary. And then Lady Bird apparently is really good. I may see that.
Yeah,
eventually.
everybody keeps talking about Lady Bird.
Like some people have seen it 4 times. Like it's that good.
Wow.
There are themes about buying prom dresses. I don't think I want to see it.
What? It's about buying prom dresses?
Well, I think it's a high school story.
It's a high school story about coming to adulthood.
And I'm sure it's really,
experience.
really good because everyone's raving about it. It's high school
I saw
story.
Murder in the Orient Express.
Oh, see, I would see that.
I liked it.
Photography, the framing was just so beautiful. Like as a photographer, I was just like, oh, it's so beautiful.
I'm one of those like children of the 80s that like I love Poirot and the Sherlock Holmes with Jeremy Brett, that any remake is not good enough.
Well, this won't be good enough, but he's really good, the actor who plays him. And all the other actors are great. You know, it's an all-star cast.
Okay.
And they struggle. And it's forced, but
you thought? I loved it.
He carried, like the main actor carried it. And everything else was just kind of, it's like following him where people are, it's like a play, actually. It's like watching a play that is unpolished with great cinematography.
Oh, God, the cinematography alone, though. Yeah.
But play on opening night, but one actor shines, you know.
I'll see it because I love Poirot so much. So
such a great job too. You're just like, yeah.
I love mysteries. I love crime mysteries. So.
And you know what? I have to say, even like the following day, I was texting the lover and saying, "Hey, do you think, like, referring back to the movie that we had seen?" And he's like, "Maybe you need to pick up the book to see what happens in the book, because you know I have this big question still, you know, mystery."
I haven't read any of Agatha Christie's books.
I have, but not on him. And again, it's been like since high school. So do you think I remember? I read all the Anne McCaffrey books. That was probably before your time. Don't remember any of them. All the Dragon series. Yeah.
I know people who have read those. I have not read those.
Oh, wow. I forgot how many people. I just had a flashback, so I don't have a lot of those memories. But when you said that, suddenly a bunch of, those Dragon books in the geek circles were huge. There was always some guy in college or high school, apparently, who had one of those and just was obsessed.
I read all of them when I was in high school.
I heard they're actually pretty good in terms of their metaphysics or something, or what was it? I can't remember. Someone was talking about them being actually a better representation of like an evolved metaphysical or mythological landscape, I think.
Interesting. I might have to.
I don't know. It's like I want to reread Wrinkle in Time because I loved it so much as a kid, read it multiple times.
Yeah.
And so I want to reread it now with the mind and knowledge I have now to see the layers.
We should do a fun book circle like that, because Lord knows that every book on my stack by my bed right now is nonfiction. So it would be nice to put some fiction in there.
And the Wrinkle in Time movie's coming out soon.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I had no idea they were making that movie, and then I was like, oh. So it'd be a good time to reread the book.
Let's all reread it and then talk
Is
about
it. Oprah or Whoopi?
I think it's Oprah.
What?
Yeah, it's Oprah. Whoopi Goldberg does a lot lot of kid movies, but I think it's Oprah.
I think it's Oprah. I think I saw that and was like, Oprah's in Wrinkle in Time. Has she been?
She would be perfect in that.
She has been in other movies, right? Has she?
Yeah. Colorful. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
she was originally an actress. Yeah. Before she got into.
Oh, she was. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Purple.
Yeah.
Or was that Whoopi?
No, it was Oprah.
No, that was Oprah. Yeah.
Wait, wasn't Whoopi in that too? Whoopi was the daughter.
Oh wait, you're right. She might have been right.
No, I don't remember now. It was such a key movie.
You know, I just love the Wrinkle in Time, the scene from the book, and I guess I wonder now how they'll do it in the movie. The scene from the book that I actually do remember that stood out to me so much was a scene where is Meg the main character? I don't
I
remember.
think so, or debatably her younger brother, but yes, she was the main character.
Main character is with an alien who doesn't have sight, and so the alien says, "Please describe sight to me," and she's like,
"Oh, I do remember that."
Well, I do that, and I was like, as a child, like, whoa,
that was such a brain fuck, wasn't it?
How would I describe sight? Of course, it could be the same. Someone who was born blind. How would you describe sight to a blind person?
Yeah, my first girlfriend was blind, and she's like, "You're asking the blind girl to see." I'm like trying to describe. She couldn't see color, and she was blind, but she'd see shadows.
Where it's like, have you seen those videos that have come out recently where people give those special glasses to colorblind?
Yeah. Then they see color, and their world just changes.
You know, and I'm like,
which you don't realize.
Because there's no way that they could know what the world to the rest of us, not the real world, but the world to the rest of us looks like. They have no conception. So how do you describe sight to someone who doesn't see?
So I've never done drugs, but I've heard that there are some drugs that have that same sort of effect where you see more colors and things more clearly.
Well, those are psychotropic or psychedelic drugs. Yeah, like LSD. The thing is, those drugs work off serotonin. So LSD resembles serotonin, and serotonin is really dramatically correlated or works with your visual system, but everything else. So it pulls it up back in. So when people have flashbacks, because it resembles serotonin, the reuptake receptors take the LSD back in. So if you do enough LSD, you know, you can affect like your speech, like Ozzy Osbourne, you know, how he talks and stuff. That is not a normal English accent. That is affected by the amount of LSD serotonin in his brain.
So, I mean, I think that, you know, if you don't have one of the five senses, then your other senses are more developed. And I think too, someone who's blind would still have an imagination with.
But how do you imagine something you've never seen? You have no frame of reference.
Well, people hear colors and see sounds on LSD, so it's like
synesthesia.
Yeah, synesthesia happens.
Well, I mean, I know that when I'm listening to very, very good classical music in a dark concert hall, I will start seeing the notes, and I see the notes. I don't even, I can't describe it. Like, they become a form, and sometimes in color, but like I can walk on the notes. Hard to explain.
Yeah, it's a different kind of sight, probably. Yeah. It's just what it is. It's not visual sight. It's a different inner sight. And the imagination of someone who can see is going to be different from the imagination of someone who doesn't have visual sight, but it's still a certain kind of inner sight.
Yeah, I'm curious. Maybe it's more like, because, you know, even as a blind person, you can feel the shape of a mug, or, you know, the ins and outs, and you know, the corners and
you can still feel the dimensions of something.
So it becomes more that like interesting.
Yeah, my imagination, visual never overrides. I see it, but when I dream, those are sometimes I have vivid dreams, which technically is a part of imagination, or is it sight? So it's how the brain works.
The brain is fascinating.
You know, EHEs are extraordinary human experiences. You know, that was the first thing that we talked about the first quarter of transpersonal psychology, you know, transpersonal psychology being largely based on some of these experiences. And I can see why a lot of those early transpersonal psychologists really were heavily into LSD. Because if that's I know one of the most recent experiences that I had was out in the desert in Joshua Tree, and sitting there in sort of a meditative state. The desert became so saturated with color that I almost couldn't take it.
Wow.
Just sitting there quietly in meditation and looking at the colors became so vivid. The blues, and it's like if you saw it with like your regular eyes, it's all brown. It's literally all brown until you get to the point where you're like really so highly focused and aware that it's not brown, that there are blues and greens and reds and oranges and so much color that it becomes overwhelming. I could see how, like, if that is what you're experiencing in LSD, I would totally be doing that all the time because I was just like, oh my, and I could see everything.
Well, if you do want to do that, magic mushroom type things, those are psilocybin. It's the safer version. It's basically the same effect as LSD, but it's only 30 minutes to an hour tops. LSD goes 6 to 12 hours, depending on your dosage and quality, and has a longer, if you have a bad trip, most people, it's not addictive. Like, it doesn't work on the reward center of the brain.
Okay. Can you
Most people stop doing it due to
who can get into that state without.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think meditators claim to be able to.
Well, holotropic breathwork can do it.
To a certain extent, yeah, I think. Holotropic breathwork is the way to reach those states without having to ingest a substance.
Oh, and I think it's because you're robbing your brain of oxygen.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Well, actually, you're hyper. Well,
oh, okay, you're hyperventilating, so you're actually flooding your brain with oxygen.
Oh, okay.
But the thing is, the lungs, that's actually technically a myth, too.
That's true, yeah.
Because the blood never gets more oxygen than it needs. So you're kind of exhausting yourself to where the brain is freaking it out.
You're like trying to override or bypass your prefrontal cortex activity in a sense, like your rational consciousness. You're trying to tire it out so that it shuts off, so you can access your deeper subconscious mind.
Yeah, so you're getting either too much CO2 in your lung buildup, where your body thinks it can't expel it fast enough, but you're still fine. You're not going to die. You're not getting too
creating anxiety for yourself, honestly, like physical anxiety.
And that's actually really good until you hit the threshold in which you give up, and then that surrender happens, and then the moment. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like drowning.
Or torture.
To me, yeah, holotropic breathwork sounds scarier than taking
I've done it a lot.
Psychotropic.
It's painful initially.
Ew. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, it's kind of, it's a lot of work. It's not like it's an intentional. It's like, oh, this is going to be a good time.
Great.
Some people get nausea, and I mean, the after effect, it's like doing hot yoga for 3 hours a day.
Ooh.
You're committing to it. And
I really don't like hot yoga.
Yeah.
But you feel great afterward for that day.
No, I feel drained after hot yoga. It does not agree with my constitution.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, or it's like a sweat lodge. I mean, basically, holotropic breathwork, it's the same thing.
Okay, I'll pass.
It creates an experience without having to do meds and stuff. I mean, yeah, there's I'd say go with what feels good or what you're interested in. For people who want an experience where you feel change, I mean, that's like the whole point of kink and BDSM. It's not necessarily that pain gives you pleasure. It's a different experience that after enough time.
Yeah, it's so temporary. I mean, I had that experience 2 years ago, right? Just when I started at Sophia, and it was incredible, and I've repeated it again in a heartbeat, but it's not a readily repeatable experience. If we could all walk around like that all the time, I mean, first of all,
it might be a little overwhelming.
That might be it too. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even with psychotropics, you never quite can tell what sort of an experience you'll have. You can't totally direct it, although there are things you can do with set and setting to ensure that it's at least a positive experience. But I mean, I think anytime you're opening the gates of perception.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's Aldous Huxley, not mine, but or William Blake, I should say, really. William Blake and Aldous Huxley. Let's credit them both. I suppose it just matters what you've repressed, what you've been ignoring, what you know, dark things are hidden within your mind, which could be all sorts of things. It's.
I'm a Trump supporter.
We can't be friends anymore. I'm so sorry.
No, it's a dark thing in my mind. It's not who I am.
From the Jungian perspective, everyone has both the dark and the light within them, and most people just repress the dark thoughts because they're uncomfortable.
Well, I like to think you choose which action you're going to give it.
Oh, there's another conversation for another day.
Yeah,
you kick a puppy, I'll probably shoot you.
Whole another conversation. Jungian shadow work and duality, and oh my goodness.
Yeah, Courtney and I were talking about shadow work last week, and I still need to try some of that. I don't know.
Work on the weekend.
I have tomorrow off. I'll try to deal with my health insurance issue. Yeah, I'll do that.
All right, folks, I think I'm going to bring this to a close because we'll talk forever.
Please do. Please do.
I'm going to take control of the situation.
So at least I'll see you, David, next week. We're not sure about you, Courtney, yet.
Yeah, I probably won't be able to.
Open invitation.
But